Chapter 575. The artificial rain in the world's end did not last for long. After the rain stopped, a beautiful rainbow appeared in the world's end. However, Wu-Ming, Reverse 16 Knights and Black Rabbit did not see this beautiful scene. On the way back to the outer gate of World 2105380, Black Rabbit held onto a seedling of an unknown plant with both hands and skipped ahead. It was clear that Black Rabbit was in a good mood. This time, Wu-Ming and Reverse 16 Knights did not disappear. Instead, they obediently followed behind Black Rabbit. Why? After all, with Black Rabbit around, the fight between Wu-Ming and Reverse 16 Knights ended without a conclusion. Not long after Wu-Ming and Reverse 16 Knights began their fight, the giant snake that Black Rabbit addressed as the water god appeared to disturb them. Then, Black Rabbit arrived as well. After being disturbed time and time again, Reverse 16 Knights lost the will to fight with Wu-Ming. In the end, Reverse 16 Knights and Wu-Ming agreed to continue if there was an opportunity. Wu-Ming had no choice but to agree. Heaven had taken pity on him. He did not want to fight with Reverse 16 Knights anymore. As an origin dragon that lived in the Great Origin, Wu-Ming's physical strength was not weak. He did not have to worry about fighting with a human. That said, the human was not ordinary at all. Due to the fact that Wu-Ming was only in his spiritual form, his physical strength was far from comparable to that of an origin dragon. Still, Wu-Ming's physical strength was enough for most situations. However, in the face of Reverse 16 Knights' punch, Wu-Ming utilized the Lune Rune and Yggdrasil's enhancement magic. Wu-Ming, who had personally fought Reverse 16 Knights, could tell that Reverse 16 Knights was a monster in human skin. After admiring the scenery in the world's end, Reverse 16 Knights attacked Wu-Ming. Instantly, Wu-Ming exchanged a punch with Reverse 16 Knights. As a result, 16 Knights and Wu-Ming both took a few steps back. It could be said that if Wu-Ming hadn't reacted in time before the force of Wu-Ming's Reverse 16 Knights' fist reached his body, Wu-Ming might have been sent flying. Wu-Ming immediately judged that the pure physical strength of his spiritual body was no match for the 16 Knights' reversal. Not bad, little brother. Although I went easy on you, you're the first person to take my fist and not die. This was what 16th Knight had said back then with great excitement. Wu-Ming felt a little helpless. She sounded as if 16th Knight often beat people to death. Wu-Ming could tell from 16 Knights' aura and moves that 16 Knights had not killed anyone. However, this might have something to do with the fact that he was in an ordinary world. Even so, Wu-Ming would not show mercy. On the contrary, Wu-Ming had to use more strength. Otherwise, he would really be beaten to death by the opponent's strange strength. In the end, because of a series of accidents, the fight between the two was forced to end. However, Wu-Ming always felt that this young man was not that simple. In addition to his extraordinary physical strength, he must have other abilities. Following behind Black Rabbit, Wu-Ming, who was walking side by side with 16 Knights' reversal, quietly glanced at 16 Knights' reversal and kept thinking. Then, 16 Knights' reversal noticed Wu-Ming's gaze and smiled at Wu-Ming, full of fighting spirit. However, it's not like I don't have any hidden strength. Wu-Ming returned the same smile as 16 Knights' reversal. Fortunately, Black Rabbit's mind was immersed in the sapling in her hand and did not notice the smile of Wu-Ming and 16 Knights' reversal. Otherwise, she would have lectured them again. He with this water tree sapling, we don't have to go to other communities to buy water anymore. We finally have our own water source, Black Rabbit said happily. However, Wu-Ming frowned when he heard this. No Name had fallen so low that they had to buy their daily water from other communities. Then Wu-Ming pondered, what kind of existence was the Demon King that attacked No Name to be able to turn the largest community in the East District into this in one night? After 16 Knights saw Wu-Ming's pondering eyes, he instantly understood what Wu-Ming was thinking. Then, as if he thought of something, 16 Knights' reversal smiled. Little brother, are you interested in taking back the name and flag of No Name from the Demon King's hands? Wuming looked at 16 Knights Reversal and smiled. Of course I'm interested, taking back the flag and name from the Demon King's hands is a must. Wuming said solemnly. Since Wuming decided to join No Name, then he would work hard for No Name and not temporarily join an organization to find his original body in this world. However, Wuming and 16 Knights Reversal's words made Black Rabbit tremble and shiver. You two problem children. Don't cause any more trouble. Black Rabbit looked at Wuming and 16 Knights Reversal helplessly and tried to persuade them. Ma, let's talk about this later when we have the chance. Wuming smiled at 16 Knights Reversal. 16 Knights Reversal spread out his hands and shrugged his shoulders. Wuming was right. After all, even if they talked about it now, they would not be able to find the Demon King that attacked No Name a few years ago. But then again, Mr. Villo and Mr. 16 Knights do not look like humans at all. Black Rabbit complained and looked at Wuming and 16 Knights Reversal as though they were monsters. Have you ever seen a human who could defeat a water god that had obtained a quintessence and knock the water god unconscious with one punch? At any rate, Black Rabbit had never seen one in his 200+ years of life. In response to Black Rabbit's words, Wuming also looked at 16 Knights Reversal as though he was looking at a monster. They were illusory spirit bodies that were separated from the physical body. Although Wuming's spirit body was essentially the same as the heroic spirits in the Valhalla, little brother, can you still disappear? That's interesting. You really are a ghost. 16 Knights Reversal looked at Wuming with interest. This once again triggered 16 Knights Reversal's problematic child nature. Then, the Black Rabbit angrily roared at Reverse 16 Knights. Mr. Problematic Child, please stop causing trouble. Yes, I understand, 16 Knights Reversal smiled and nodded as if he had succeeded in teasing Black Rabbit. Is this the outer gate of 2105380? Wuming, who was not looking ahead, suddenly spoke. Then, Black Rabbit and 16 Knights Reversal also looked ahead. It was indeed the place where Black Rabbit and Ren Russell met before. Phew, we're finally here. Black Rabbit breathed a sigh of relief. She was already troubled by the two problematic children behind her. Now, she was finally free. However, Black Rabbit forgot that two problematic children had already entered the city, and they were led by the immature leader, Ren. Chapter 576. We are going to have a gift match with Forsgaro. The kind where both sides are betting everything. And they are the ones who started it. Wah, 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 what is going on? Black Rabbit brought Wuming and 16 Knights into the city gate and found Ren, Jiumotu, and Kasuga Hibakushi sitting in an outdoor cafe. Then, the three of them told him that they were going to have a gift match with Forsgaro. Black Rabbit looked like he was about to collapse when he heard the news. 16 Knights, on the other hand, had an interesting expression. Wuming, on the other hand, was deep in thought. Then, as the leader, Ren told him what happened. Originally, Ren brought Jiumotu and Kasuga Hibakushi to the cafe and waited for Black Rabbit to look for Wuming and 16 Knights. Although life in No Name was tight, the cafe here was very friendly, and no matter how tight life in the community was, it could not be said. In the end, when the three of them sat down and ordered, a tall man named Guard Gasper, the leader of the Forsgaro community, suddenly sat down at Jiumotu and the other two seats. He wanted me, Kasuga Hibakushi, and Black Rabbit to join his community, and he even mocked the situation with No Name. He was just like a clown. Jiumotu held her forehead with one hand and had an "I'm about to be laughed at" look. Then, something must have happened, and that's why you guys decided to have a gift match with Forsgaro. Wuming asked with his arms crossed. Although Jiumotu and Kasuga Hibakushi were problematic children, they were not people who did not know the gravity of the situation. Because he was very angry, he did not consider the consequences of finding trouble, and he did not consider the consequences at all. Jiumotu and Kasuga Hibakushi calmly said something that made people speechless. Alright, problematic children are still problematic children, you two big idiots. Such an answer made Black Rabbit pull out a folding fan from out of nowhere and hit the two men's heads. Although there were indeed two problematic children, the more important reason was the orc named Guard Gasper. Thanks to Miss Flying Bird's grace, we've learned some things from Guard, Rin continued, but his expression did not look too good. Due to the other party's bragging, my community is the community that has continuously won the gift competition with the other communities by betting on their flags. Zhou Yuanfei's words made Zhou Yuanfei suspicious. After all, Wu Ming had also explained Black Rabbit's words in layman's terms. The world community's flag was as important as the national flag. Logically speaking, it was unlikely that there would be consecutive flag betting competitions. Then, Distant Bird used his grace to control the other party, forcing him to reveal the truth. My ability has the effect of completely dominating the opponent, Zhou Yufei said. It was through this effect that everyone learned about Guard's methods. By secretly capturing the old, weak, women, and children of the other community, and then threatening the other community to enter the gift competition with the flag bet. Then, by threatening the other community, he won and took the other community into the Forsgaro. Oh, so to say, Guard can be said to be the largest community in this 2105380 outer sect area. After 16 Knights finished speaking, he looked at Wu Ming. Wu Ming naturally understood what 16 Knights meant, so he followed 16 Knights' explanation. Then, Guard must have used some method to control the other communities, so that such a large community can be maintained without chaos. Then, Wu Ming showed a disdainful expression. According to what Guard did, he probably captured some children who were the future of the other communities and used them as hostages to control the other communities. It couldn't be said that Wu Ming knew a lot, because if Wu Ming was on Guard's side, he would do the same thing. However, Wu Ming would never become someone like Guard. Even if Wu Ming became the villain, Guard's methods would still make Wu Ming despise Wu Ming. Unfortunately, you only guessed half of it right. Distant Bird shook his head. Through Distant Bird's grace of domination, Guard said what he did, and it was indeed the same as what Wu Ming said, but those children have been killed by Guard, and even their bodies. Haruai Toshi was halfway through his sentence, and he couldn't continue. Black Rabbit covered her mouth in disbelief, and 16 Knights frowned slightly. Naturally, Jutaka Renwa and Haruai Hiroyuki already knew about it. Black Rabbit, Wu Ming and 16 Knights reversal were no fools either. They naturally knew what would happen to a corpse in the hands of a beast man like Guard. Phew, Wu Ming closed his eyes and breathed a sigh of relief. It wasn't that Wu Ming didn't have any lives on his hands, nor was he a saint, nor was he unable to accept the deaths of those children. But Wu Ming was really angry with Guard's inhumane approach. The most important reason why Wu Ming liked humans was that humans had a kind nature. Sure enough, even if they transformed into human form, a beast was still a beast. To be honest, I have the urge to destroy Forsgaro. Although Wu Ming didn't burst out any amazing momentum, the murderous intent in his eyes was real. However, no one reacted to Wu Ming's murderous intent because Guard's approach was too heartless. But fortunately, we have Mr. 16 Knights and Mr. Villo on our side. It should be more than enough to deal with Guard. Black Rabbit patted her chest and sighed in relief. Ha! What are you talking about? They are the ones who are looking for trouble, it has nothing to do with me. 16 Knights spread her hands, indicating that she wouldn't participate. Black Rabbit was confused again. Ah, you're quite sensible. What about you, Villo? Jiu Yuasuka didn't care about Black Rabbit's reaction and looked at Wu Ming. Wu Ming thought for a moment, then shook his head. If that's the case, you guys should participate in this gift competition. Wu Ming had his own reasons for doing so. Although Wu Ming knew that guard must be very weak to him, being played around by the two girls, he decided not to make a move for the time being since it was his first time here. Instead, he decided to observe the situation for the time being. He also planned to look up some information to understand this world better. Moreover, this was also in line with Jo Yuasuke and Haruhi Hiroyuki's wishes, so why not? Then it's settled. Haruhi Hiroyuki made the final decision. Young Master Ren, why didn't you stop the two of them? Black Rabbit said helplessly. I'm sorry, Black Rabbit, because I couldn't stand it anymore, so... Ren gave Black Rabbit an apologetic smile. That was true. Anyone who encountered such a situation would be filled with righteous indignation. However, without Wu Ming and 16 Knights' participation, Black Rabbit was quite worried. You don't have to worry, Black Rabbit. Haruhi Hiroyuki instantly subdued guard when he went berserk. Is Hiroyuki that strong? Black Rabbit looked at Haruhi Hiroyuki in surprise. Not only Black Rabbit, but Wu Ming and 16 Knights also looked at Haruhi Hiroyuki. Seems like you have some skills, Haruhi Hiroyuki. 16 Knights showed an interested smile. Wu Ming also didn't expect that Haruhi Hiroyuki, who looked so weak, would be able to subdue the berserk beast man. Together with Miss Jo Yuasuke's ability to dominate, I believe that with Miss Jo Yuasuke and Haruhi Hiroyuki, our no-name will definitely win this gift competition. Ren said some encouraging words in one go. Oh! Black Rabbit shouted excitedly. Although it was awkward for her to be the only one shouting. This leader is not bad, but she still needs some polishing. Wu Ming thought. Well, since everyone is here, let's go to the no-names territory to take a look. Wu Ming and the other three nodded, and began to follow Ren and Black Rabbit to the no-name territory. Chapter 577. This is no-name's base. Zhou Yuao said in surprise. Let alone a base, from Zhou Yuao's point of view, this was clearly a ruin from who knows where. But she couldn't be blamed, anyone who saw such a scene would be surprised. What appeared in front of Wu Ming's group was a huge ruined courtyard that looked like a castle and a vast wasteland. There was even a huge hole in the middle of the wasteland. 16 Knights walked to the side of a broken wall and used his hand to lightly grab it. The wall immediately shattered like sand. Haruhi Hikari walked to the empty space and grabbed a handful of soil. He found that it was all soil and sand that had lost its nutrients. Black Rabbit, I remember you said that the Demon King's attack happened a few years ago, right? 16 Knights was rarely serious. To be precise, it was 3 years ago. Black Rabbit lowered his head. Zhou Yuao walked to Haruhi Hikari's side and looked at no-name's land that looked like it had been abandoned for hundreds or thousands of years. She frowned. But looking at the broken walls here, it's impossible to reach such a state in just 3 years. It wasn't that Zhou Yuao was merciless, but this scene was too shocking. I'm sorry, this was indeed a fertile land 3 years ago. But because of the Demon King's attack 3 years ago, this land is still like this. Ren lowered his head secretly. It could be said that if Black Rabbit and Ren weren't members of No Name, they wouldn't believe that such a vast land could become like this in just 3 years. No, it should be said that it was in one night. But this land really did become like this on that night 3 years ago. And besides that, No Name's flag, name, and companions were all taken away. The Demon King left the land that has become like this to the remaining 120 members of No Name. But because these lands are barren, there are no other communities that want to take advantage of them. For everyone, it's already good to have a place to stay. Black Rabbit forced a smile, trying to make himself look less sad. Judo Asuka and Haruhi Hiroyuki looked at each other, nodded, and walked towards the Black Rabbit. What do Miss Fei Niao and Miss Yao want to do? Black Rabbit looked at the two people who were walking towards him and asked. Punish the Black Rabbit. The Black Rabbit was stunned. Then, the Black Rabbit's ears were grabbed by the two people's hands, and it was the kind that was very forceful. Wait a minute. Why did he have to punish the Black Rabbit? And why is the punishment of pulling my ears? The Black Rabbit's eyes were filled with tears as it covered its ears with a pitiful expression. There's no need to do that in front of your companions, Black Rabbit. Zhou Yuanfei pulled on Black Rabbit's ear and said with interest. We're all companions. There's no need to force yourself like this. Haruai Hikari was the same. However, compared to Q Hikari, Haruai Hikari was happier. I know. So please spare Black Rabbit's ears. Ren stood at the side and revealed a helpless expression as he looked at Zhou Yuanfei and Haruai Hikari pulling on Black Rabbit's ears. So this is the power of the Devil King. Leaving behind a symbol of his destruction to show his strength. What a proper villain. 16 knights looked at the ruins and said excitedly without caring about Zhou Yuanfei and Haruai Hikari playing with Black Rabbit's ears. Then, 16 knights realized that Wu Ming was nowhere to be seen. After looking around carefully, he realized that Wu Ming was doing something in the huge hole in the wasteland. Hey! Brother! Did you find something? 16 knights shouted at Wu Ming and walked towards Wu Ming. Thanks to this, Zhou Yuanfei and the rest were attracted over. Everyone looked at Wu Ming who was standing at the edge of the hole. Did you really find something? Zhou Yuanfei and Haruai Hikari let go of Black Rabbit's ears and walked towards Wu Ming. Only then did Black Rabbit was released. Let's go take a look too, Black Rabbit. Ren said to Black Rabbit who was rubbing her ears. Although he said it with an apologetic and helpless expression. Although Black Rabbit was angry that her ears were being played with by the two problem children, she was also curious about Wu Ming's current situation. So, she nodded. The three problem children gathered around Wu Ming and looked at the hole that wasn't very big. They couldn't find anything out of the ordinary. This hole was created because the Devil King who attacked 3 years ago took away something underground. Black Rabbit began to explain. According to the older generation members of the community, this area has been a land of miraculous power since a long time ago. Many people speculated that there was some kind of powerful blessing buried underground. Every one of them wanted to dig this place up in search of the treasure. However, due to the interference of the various forces, none of them succeeded. It was only when our community heard about this that we moved our headquarters here, Ren explained. Then, you don't plan to dig up the gift in the ground? Zhou Yuanfei asked. After all, this was a land that many communities were fighting over. Shouldn't they dig it up to see what was inside? In fact, our community's previous leader led the core members to dig up this land. However, for some reason, it was left unsettled. Needless to say, the former members of No Name must have encountered some unexpected situation during the digging process. Moreover, it was an unprecedented situation, so they had no choice but to stop digging. Black Rabbit said with a regretful expression. Black Rabbit is also very curious about what is inside. Unfortunately, Black Rabbit isn't strong enough to see that scene. Then, Black Rabbit's expression became serious. Since then, everyone in the community was told not to have any ideas about the treasure under this land. Everyone was obedient, so they didn't bother about what was under the land. And 3 years ago, when the Devil King attacked our community, he took away the mysterious gift under this land. After taking it away, this huge hole was left behind. Hearing Black Rabbit's explanation, 16 knights looked at Wu Ming with interest. But it seems like little brother has a lot to do with the mysterious gift under this land. 16 knights looked at Wu Ming who was starting to get irritated and said jokingly. Although Wu Ming didn't say anything, everyone present could see that Wu Ming was in a very bad mood at the moment. It could be said that Wu Ming was angry. Although Wu Ming didn't say anything, his heart was indeed about to explode. The mysterious gift that was once buried in this huge hole was the body of his dragon of origin. Chapter 578. At this moment, Wu Ming's heart was abnormally complicated, and he felt quite helpless. Originally, after understanding that this world covered an incomparably large area, Wu Ming would not be able to easily find his original body. Although he could find it as long as he got close, Wu Ming felt that he would have to put in some effort. As a result, when he got close to the base of No Name, Wu Ming sensed the presence of his original body. Once he entered, Wu Ming did not say anything and went straight to the place where he sensed his original body, and then he saw a huge pit. Wu Ming was stunned at first, then he began to feel irritated. Originally, he thought that he would have to put in some effort, but in the end, he sensed the presence of his original body. This made Wu Ming happy for a moment, and then he realized that he had indeed found traces of his original body's presence, traces that had once existed in this place. And after Wu Ming finished listening to Black Rabbit's explanation, Wu Ming was a little angry. The former members of No Name excavating Wu Ming's body was not a big deal. After all, people were curious about the unknown, and the former members of No Name finally stopped excavating. They must have discovered that Wu Ming's original body was under the ground. Although he did not know why they stopped, Wu Ming was quite satisfied that they knew when to advance and when to retreat. And those demon kings who took Wu Ming's body were really looking for trouble. As the largest community in the East, No Name's strength 3 years ago was definitely not weak, but they still stopped excavating Wu Ming's original body. Wu Ming himself also knew that his original body was incomparably precious in a sense, and the former members of No Name being able to resist the temptation was naturally not bad. As for that demon king, since he was able to destroy No Name in one night, then his strength must be even stronger than No Name 3 years ago. And for a demon king who was stronger than No Name 3 years ago, and who wantonly used his authority as the host to attack other communities, there was nothing that he could not, or rather, did not dare to do. He just did not know if the opponent's courage was as strong as his strength, if Wu Ming found the opportunity. Wu Ming took a deep breath, trying to relax himself. Then, Wu Ming looked at everyone apologetically. Sorry, everyone, I lost my composure. It's okay, Mr. Villo must have discovered something important to him, that's why he lost his composure. Black Rabbit smiled slightly, and everyone nodded. Mr. Villo is our companion now. If possible, I hope that Villo can pour out all the bitterness in his heart. Black Rabbit could be said to apply what she learned. I am also curious as to what little brother discovered to be so angry, 16 Knights said with a chuckle. Judo Asuka and Hiroi Hiroyuki nodded as well. Silent state was quite worrying. Wu Ming looked at everyone and fell into deep thought. That, if it's something that's inconvenient to say, you don't have to say it. Ren saw Wu Ming's hesitation and quickly tried to smooth things over. Wu Ming looked at Ren, smiled, and shook his head. There's nothing inconvenient, don't worry, Rin-kun. Wu Ming was actually thinking about what to say. Then, Wu Ming looked at everyone and spoke. 16 Knights and Black Rabbit already know, but I don't think the others know that I'm currently in a state similar to a ghost. Ghost? Jiuyu, Wu Ming, and Ren muttered. State. Black Rabbit and 16 Knights paid attention to the other part of Wu Ming's words. Let's put it this way, although I'm a ghost, I'm not dead, and this ghost state is the result of my own choice. Then, Wu Ming told everyone the half-truth and half-lie that he had conceived. In other words, you met a very powerful enemy, and when both sides were injured, you moved your spirit out of your body, and by chance, you found out that your real body was in this world, so you came to look for it. 16 Knights concluded Wu Ming's words. It feels a little magical. Wu Ming said calmly, but his eyes were filled with interest when he looked at Wu Ming, proving that Wu Ming's heart was not as calm as it seemed. Although it does feel magical, I didn't expect Willow to be a ghost. Let me touch it. Jiuyu's face was red, and her hands and feet began to move. Her gaze towards Wu Ming became dangerous, from Wu Ming's perspective. Although it's theoretically possible to separate one's spirit and body, this is the first time I've seen it. Ren looked at Wu Ming with interest. Although Ren was the current leader of No Name, he was still a child in his teens. He was far from the wisdom of an adult, so it was natural for him to be interested in strange things. But then again, Mr. Willow can travel between worlds on his own. That's a very powerful ability. Anyway, Black Rabbit could not travel between worlds, and among the people she knew, only the Shura gods and Buddhas had such an ability. Although Wu Ming's ability to travel between worlds was much higher than what Black Rabbit had imagined. In short, little brother, your real body was taken away by the Demon King, right? Then, are you interested in fighting the Demon King together? 16 Knights suddenly said. Wait a minute. Against the Demon King or whatever, we can't do it alone. Ren was shocked. That's right. Currently, there are only 6 people in our community who can participate in the gift competition. Moreover, Black Rabbit is a noble from the Box Court, so she can't freely participate in the gift competition. Although young Master Ren can participate in the gift competition, his strength is also very weak. Therefore, our current combat power is only the 4 of you who have just joined the Willow. Therefore, it's better to honestly develop the community bit by bit. Although the sentence "young Master Ren is very weak" made Ren's heart ache, it was the truth. Oh. So what, does having fewer people mean that we're weak? 16 Knights asked with a smile. 16 Knights' words made Black Rabbit and Ren look at each other. Indeed, the number of people doesn't mean the strength of the community. 3 years ago, there weren't many members of No Name, but they still became a community whose flag flew everywhere in the East District. Then there's no problem. Moreover, if we want to develop the community, there's nothing we can do without a name. Since that's the case, then why don't we just aim to become the Demon King? 16 Knights put his hands in his pockets, showing the look of a delinquent. Indeed, if we aim to defeat the Demon King that everyone is afraid of, it's hard not to be famous. Jo Yuasuke agreed with 16 Knights' words. Agreed. The quiet girl Haruai Hiroyuki silently raised her small hand and agreed with the two. But Black Rabbit clearly wanted to say something, but 16 Knights of Reverse interrupted Black Rabbit. Then, little brother, you will definitely agree. After all, your real body was taken away by the Demon King. 16 Knights looked at Wu Ming, who hadn't spoken yet. Of course, even if you don't defeat the Demon King, I will go back by myself. Wu Ming said with incomparable determination. One must know that his purpose of coming to this world was to find his real body. His real body was currently taken away by the Demon King who attacked No Name, so there was only one thing left to do, and that was to beat up the Demon King and then take back his real body. What do you think, young Master Tiny Tot? After Wu Ming agreed, 16 Knights turned around and looked at Ren. Young Master Ren. Black Rabbit looked at Ren worriedly. After all, Ren had the title of the community leader. Although it existed in name, the community still needed Ren's approval to do anything. At this moment, the young man named Ren Russell lowered his head and hesitated. Ren didn't really understand the abilities of these new members. He only saw a trace of it from Jo Yuasuke and Haruai Hiroyuki. Both of them had a very powerful gift to some extent. As for Wu Ming and 16 Knights, although Ren didn't know much about them, when Black Rabbit gave Ren the gift card containing the water tree sapling, Ren already knew that 16 Knights and Wu Ming were not weak existences. To be able to go to the end of the world alone and defeat the water god, it was enough to give him the courage to challenge the Demon King. I'm sorry, Black Rabbit. Wren apologized to Black Rabbit. Young Master Wren, you want to. Black Rabbit looked at Wren in surprise. In this way, how could everyone not know Wren's choice? That's right, I have decided to listen to Lord Reversal's suggestion and set the community's purpose to defeat the Demon King. Wren looked at everyone with an incomparably determined gaze. Well done, young Master Tiny Tot. 16 Knights laughed wildly. Quite decisive, you have the makings of a good leader. Jo Yuasuka gracefully flicked her hair. As expected, I can find friends here. Although Hiroi Hiroyuki's words were somewhat inexplicable, it was still able to liven up the atmosphere. Young Master Wren, I support you. Black Rabbit clenched his fist. Even if it's for my main body, I have to work hard. Wu Ming said jokingly. After all, if it wasn't for his main body, would Wu Ming not work hard? That was obviously impossible. Then, Wren gave an inspiring speech. Then, everyone, in order to take back our flag and name, work hard towards the goal of defeating the Demon King. Oh, oh, oh. Black Rabbit roared angrily. This made everyone feel awkward. Taking a closer look, it was 16 Knights who covered Wren's mouth. Wu Ming and the other 3 also subconsciously kept quiet. Clearly, the Black Rabbit was being teased again. You problematic children, the quick-witted Wu Ming had already spiritualized and watched the remaining 3 problematic children being reprimanded by Black Rabbit. What a nice big family. Chapter 579. Although Wren had been sent back to the 16 Knights of hitting the snake with a stick and the purpose of no name was to defeat the Demon King, he still had to pay attention to the current situation. That was the competition with Forsgaro. The competition with Forsgaro is tomorrow. Let's take this opportunity to do a gift appraisal. Therefore, Wu Ming and the other 3 followed Wren and Black Rabbit and went to a shop called Thousand Eyes. Along the way, Black Rabbit told everyone about Thousand Eyes. Thousand Eyes was a large business community headquartered in the upper 4 digits of the 3,345 outer gates. According to Black Rabbit, Thousand Eyes was an omniscient existence in the east, west, north, and south districts of Hakata. This suited the community's name, Thousand Eyes. Wu Ming was interested in such a community that had a lot of information. Along the way, he asked Black Rabbit a lot about Thousand Eyes. But basically, Black Rabbit only answered things like, powerful, having many community members under their command. Wu Ming did not have any key, secret, information that he wanted to hear. But thinking about it, Black Rabbit was just a member of no name. Even if he was a Hakata noble, it was unlikely that he would know about the other community's secrets. Then, just as Black Rabbit finished explaining about Thousand Eyes, Wu Ming sensed something flying towards them. If Silent Wonder's judgment was correct, the flying object's target was their group. Roajax of blazing 7 circles. Wu Ming rushed in front of everyone and put one of his hands in front of him. Instantly, a shield that looked like 7 purple petals appeared. Bang! The white figure collided with the relic that Wu Ming had created at the last minute using the Create Green item. The sound of the collision was so loud that it was painful to listen to. At the same time, Soundless Shield instantly released a large amount of air waves to the surroundings, as if it had been affected by the collision. The shockwave blew everyone's hair into a mess. Even a lady like Zhou Yuanfei now couldn't stand properly. Everyone was shocked. It was obvious that they did not understand what was going on. Could it be a divine spark armament? Black Rabbit looked at the shield Wu Ming used in disbelief. 16 Knights, on the other hand, stared at Wu Ming with an excited smile. As expected, you're very strong, little brother. 16 Knights didn't notice the white figure's attack, but Wu Ming did. This meant that whether it was the white figure or Wu Ming, they were both stronger than him. After all, my mental strength isn't fake. It's not strange for me to sense that someone is coming before you. As he spoke, the 7 rings of blazing talent in front of Wu Ming's palm shattered, revealing the white figure that fell to the ground after colliding with Wu Ming's noble artifact. It was a kimono with a black base and blue sides that was the size of a primary school student. However, the most attractive part was her snow-white hair that was tied into a small braid. She was a proper kimono loli. Her inhuman-like pointy ears and golden pupils told everyone that the kimono loli in front of them was not human. After seeing the kimono loli's true face, Black Rabbit was obviously stunned. Master White Yiksha. Why are you at the lower level? It seemed like she was someone that he knew. This made Wu Ming feel awkward. Ouch. You really don't know how to be gentle with a girl. You actually used a shield to block a beautiful girl who threw herself at you. The kimono loli named White Yiksha rubbed her head that was hurting from the collision and got up from the ground. After all, I'm facing an unknown person who suddenly attacked me. What I did was right. Wu Ming shrugged. Oh, you're quite good at talking back. However, seeing that you were able to discover me, I won't argue with you, Mr. Ghost. Likewise, kimono loli. As he spoke, Wu Ming and White Yiksha looked at each other. Both of them stared into each other's eyes so closely that it seemed like sparks were flying. Two of you, please stop for a moment. Black Rabbit's forehead was sweating as he tried to persuade them. Humph. For Black Rabbit's sake, I won't argue with you. White Yiksha took out a folding fan and opened it with a swing, covering the lower half of his face. Thank you for your magnanimity, White Yiksha. Wu Ming responded with a smile. Immediately after, White Yiksha led everyone to a room in 1,000 eyes. Let me introduce myself first. I'm a cadre of 1,000 eyes, White Yiksha. At the same time, I'm also the floor master of the East District. Then, White Yiksha used the folding fan to cover his face and looked at Wu Ming. Villo Saransword, new member of No Name. A lost ghost who is searching for his original body, Wu Ming said simply. Next to Wu Ming were 16 Knights Reversal, Zhou Yuanfei, and Haruhibu Yayoi. 16 Knights Reversal, as you can see, the new member of No Name is an ordinary human, 16 Knights Reversal said heroically. Zhou Yuanfei, new member of No Name. At the moment, he's also an ordinary human, Zhou Yuanfei said elegantly. Haruhibu Yayoi, new member of No Name. An ordinary human. This is Sanmao Cat, Haruhibu Yayoi said in a casual manner and introduced his cat at the same time. However, to Black Rabbit, these 4 people were disaster-level problem children. Oh, are you the people that Black Rabbit summoned from another world? Let's not talk about these 3 for now. Your introduction to yourself is a little short. With that said, White Yiksha looked at Wu Ming. Then. Lord White Yiksha, please don't be so calculative. Black Rabbit thought that White Yiksha was still concerned about what happened just now and hurriedly tried to smooth things over. However, White Yiksha was not such a calculative person. She only cared about Wu Ming's identity. Although it's also because I didn't deliberately hide my figure, it can be said that you're very powerful to be able to discover my figure. I'm slightly interested in you. Immediately after, White Yiksha covered the lower half of her face with the paper fan and continued speaking. You should know that at the moment, I'm the strongest existence below 4 digits. You should know that the water god that Mr. Villo and Mr. 16 Knights defeated was given a godhead by Lord White Yiksha, Black Rabbit explained kindly. That made 16 Knights, Zhou Yuasuka, and Haruhibu Yayoi raise their eyebrows. Black Rabbit was instantly frightened as she was afraid that these 3 problem children would do something again. On the other hand, Wu Ming had the thought that this guy is really strong. One should know that the fake Roajax that Wu Ming created earlier using the Create Green item was filled with a large amount of mana by Wu Ming. It could be said that it was comparable to a real relic. After all, when facing an unknown world and unknown dangers, one had to face it with 200% of their attitude. However, even so, the fake Roajax that Wu Ming created had 7 layers of shields shattered after White Yiksha collided with it. At that time, the airwave that was produced was because all 7 floors had been broken through. If not for Wu Ming injecting a large amount of mana at the last minute, perhaps the fake Roajax would have shattered right away. Not only that, the reason why Wu Ming was hostile to White Yiksha was entirely because of the sense of danger that White Yiksha gave Wu Ming. To put it simply, White Yiksha's ability was definitely one of the top in the box. "I'm indeed not weak, but I'm just a spirit that's looking for my original body," Wu Ming said calmly. "Is that so?" White Yiksha took a deep look at Wu Ming. "But the power that can split a star in your body makes me nervous." Hey. Black Rabbit and Kazuhito looked at Wu Ming in shock. Even the 3 problem children looked at Wu Ming curiously. Wu Ming, on the other hand, felt rather helpless. The power that White Yiksha mentioned that could split a star in half was undoubtedly the divine sword of salvation. Although Wu Ming's spiritual body could use it, it was like a follower's relic. It was a god relic formed from pure mana. Theoretically, White Yiksha should not be too far away. However, there was another possibility, which was that White Yiksha had a close relationship with a star like the sun. Otherwise, White Yiksha would not be so cautious of Wu Ming. "Be that as it may, I just want to find my original body as soon as possible," Wu Ming said calmly. He had no intention of explaining his power to everyone. Firstly, Wu Ming could not explain it clearly in a short period of time. Secondly, the power to split a star was considered a trump card, so there was no need to explain it too clearly. That was why everyone did not ask Wu Ming specifically. "Well then, I hope you find your original body soon." White Yiksha smiled lightly. Subsequently, White Yiksha looked at everyone. "So, what are you doing here at this branch of Thousand Yes?" Chapter 580. "Actually, we're here to appraise the gift. Can you help us appraise it, Lord White Yiksha?" Black Rabbit looked at White Yiksha with greedy eyes. Clearly, Black Rabbit and White Yiksha knew each other, and they looked like acquaintances. Of course, appraising a gift would require some handling fees. With the current financial situation of No Name, they would save as much as they could. Appraising the gift. White Yiksha glanced at Wu Ming, then looked around at Reverse 16 Knights, Jiu Fei Niao, and Haruhito Hikari. "Alright, although this isn't what I'm good at, since Black Rabbit has spoken, let me help you a little." With that said, White Yiksha clapped his hands. Instantly, 4 rays of light condensed above Wu Ming and the others. Then, the light solidified and turned into 4 cards of different colors. They fell and were subconsciously grabbed by the 4. "That's gift card," Black Rabbit exclaimed. "Gift card." Jiu Fei Niao muttered as she looked at the red piece of paper in her hand and the words written on it. "That's a high-level gift called Laplace paper. Not only can it store the gift, but it can also control the concealment and appearance of the gift card according to one's needs. Simply put, it's a bound personal warehouse," White Yiksha explained. "Not only that, but the gift card can also appraise your gift. What's written on the paper is your gift." With that, White Yiksha moved and came to Wu Ming's side. He was quite interested in Wu Ming's gift. Then, he would be disappointed by the result. Blank. White Yiksha looked at the gift card in Wu Ming's hand with no words on it with a surprised expression. Then, as if he wanted to confirm whether the gift card was broken, White Yiksha moved to Reverse 16 Knight's side and looked at his gift card. "Don't know." White Yiksha became more and more suspicious of whether these gift cards were broken. However, after seeing Prestige written on Jiu Fei Niao's card and Life Catalog written on Haruhito Hikari's card, this suspicion disappeared. But at the same time, he was curious about Wu Ming and the 16 Nights reversal. There had never been a case where 16 Nights couldn't be detected and Wu Ming was blank. If 16 Nights' grace couldn't be detected, it could be said that it was affected by its own grace, but Wu Ming's grace was completely blank. If the gift card was not damaged, it meant that the person being tested did not receive a gift. However, Wu Ming wasn't surprised. Although his ability could be considered a gift, Wu Ming didn't come from this world. Therefore, the definition of this world didn't apply to Wu Ming. This is really interesting. I'm looking forward to your future. Opening his fan to cover his chin, Wei Yixiao looked at Wu Ming and 16 Nights with interest. No Name was only here to test the grace. Now that the results were out, there was no reason for them to stay any longer. Therefore, Wu Ming and the rest bid farewell to Bai Yixiao. On the way back, Wu Ming began to remind them. The competition with Forsgaro is tomorrow. Those who are going to participate in the competition should prepare a little. Hearing Wu Ming's words, Ren, who was going to participate in the grace competition, nodded solemnly. Regardless of seniority, he was the weakest among all of them. Naturally, he needed to prepare. For Jiu Fei Niao and Haruhito Hikari, even without Wu Ming's reminder, the two problem children wouldn't relax. Or rather, how could they relax when it was their first time doing something in another world? It was like a child who couldn't sleep because of the excitement of going to the zoo the next day. However, the two of them weren't unable to sleep. Next, everyone returned to the No Name base. Then, Rin and Black Rabbit took Wu Ming's group of 4 to visit the various rooms and places in the No Name base. Although because of the Demon King, No Name not only was the land barren, but the houses also became dangerous. However, in the past 3 years, the remaining child members of No Name, Black Rabbit, and Rin didn't stay idle. They sneakily repaired the No Name house. At the very least, it was no longer a problem for people to live in. It was no longer a dangerous house. After the 4 of them chose their rooms, Wu Ming heard that there was a huge library under No Name. Then, after getting Ren's permission, Wu Ming said goodbye to everyone and went straight to the library alone. After coming to an unfamiliar place, the most important thing was to obtain unfamiliar knowledge. Because that meant that you had obtained information. And Wu Ming didn't have to worry about the language barrier. There was a magical place in the box court world. No matter what kind of world the person came from, no matter what kind of language the person spoke, what kind of words, the box court world would unify them, allowing the person's words to be automatically converted into the other person's language. For example, the person opposite you was clearly speaking English, but in your eyes, he was speaking German, whether it was the mouth or the voice. It was quite magical. But even if the box court didn't have such an ability, it didn't matter to Wu Ming. As the origin of almost all worlds, every time Wu Ming came to a new world, he would automatically master the world's common language. Otherwise, Wu Ming wouldn't be able to communicate normally with other people in other worlds. In addition, Wu Ming also had the God Slayer's 1,000 languages ability, which allowed him to completely learn a language in a very short time. In short, Wu Ming would never encounter an awkward situation where he couldn't read. Just like that, Wu Ming found a small, sturdy table, cleaned the dust on it, and sat down to read. It had to be said that although No Name had declined, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Although the library wasn't very big, the collection of books was still quite rich. Currently, Collis wasn't by Wu Ming's side, and Wu Ming didn't have the ability to quickly read books, so Wu Ming could only read books that were more important to Wu Ming. For example, the history of the box court, the specific classification of the box court, and so on. After an unknown amount of time, Wu Ming finished reading an unknown number of books in his hands. After closing it, he used his telekinesis to control the book and put it back on the bookshelf. Wu Ming couldn't help but sigh again. No Name was once the largest community in the East District. The quality of the books in the library was quite high. Wu-ming even thought that some of the books here might not be available in other communities. Moreover, the no-name library was well maintained. Although it had experienced the Demon King's attack, it was now only slightly dusty. It didn't look like it had been abandoned for 3 years. Someone should be cleaning it regularly. And Wu-ming could also see from some details that someone had been to this underground library recently. Maybe it's Ren. Wu-ming speculated. After all, even if he was the leader of a community in name only, Ren was still the leader of a community. It was necessary to supplement his knowledge appropriately. But judging from the dust in this underground library, the other party didn't come to the library often. Generally speaking, I've understood enough. Let's go out for a walk. As he said that, Wu-ming's eyes flashed. It's about time someone came. Then, Wu-ming walked out of the underground library and came to the surface. Chapter 581. After coming to the surface, Wu-ming found that the sky was completely dark. It's already this late. Wu-ming carefully looked at the moon in the sky that was almost the same as the moon in the ordinary world. Calculating the time by the moon's position, it was already midnight. After reading some books about this world, Wu-ming thought that in this world where gods and Buddhas walked everywhere, the moon should have been taken by the moon god. In the end, it was still hanging in the sky. But maybe the moon god was happy to do so. No longer paying attention to the moon, Wu-ming began to walk towards the outskirts of No Name's base. I hope I didn't miss a good show. No Name's base wasn't small, it could accommodate more than 100 people. Plus, it was bedtime, so Wu-ming didn't meet the other members of No Name. Jiu Yuasuke, Haruai Yori, and even Black Rabbit were probably already asleep. After all, staying up late wasn't good for the girl's skin, and there was a competition tomorrow. But Ren and 16 Knights probably couldn't go back to sleep. 16 Knights' proposal to fight the Infernal King was obviously not a random proposal, so it wasn't impossible for 16 Knights and Ren to have a candlelight talk tonight. But with 16 Knights' brain, there shouldn't be a need for a candlelight talk, which meant that Ren should be asleep. And in Wu-ming's opinion, 16 Knights definitely wouldn't sleep. That guy is a smart guy, it's impossible that he didn't think that Forsgaro would send people to play dirty. The good show Wu-ming mentioned before was this. After all, this trick had worked against the opponent time and time again. How could the opponent give up using this trick just because he was tricked during the day? As Wu-ming spoke, he expanded the range of his spiritual perception. In an instant, No Name's entire base was enveloped by Wu-ming's spiritual power. Over there. Wu-ming revealed an expression that said he expected it, and then walked in the direction of his perception. In Wu-ming's perception, Wu-ming saw 16 Knights standing in front of a small forest. However, not only did Wu-ming sense 16 Knights, but he also sensed a group of thieves in the woods. However, Wu-ming couldn't help but complain about the other party's sneaking technique. Perhaps in front of ordinary people, the other party's technique was quite perfect, but in Wu-ming's eyes, the other party was like a big light bulb walking in the dark. It was hard not to notice. To put it simply, 16 Knights had already discovered them. Boom! It sounded like something had exploded. Wu-ming didn't need to look to know that it was 16th Knights. After walking over unhurriedly, this was the scene that greeted him. Reverse 16 Knights smiled as he weighed the small stones in his hand. He looked at the 5 or 6 assassin-like people lying on the ground in front of him. There was also a crater in front of them that looked like it had been hit by a cannonball. There was no doubt that these people were wearing the blessing of Knight stealth, but because their levels were too low, they couldn't hide from 16 Knights. As for the crater in front of them, it was obvious from the rock in 16th Knight's hand that it was caused by the rock 16th Knight threw. What an inhuman human, Wu-ming complained in his heart. Oh, isn't it little brother? You finally came out of the library. Although he had already noticed Wu Ming's spirit, 16 Knights still had a, "Oh, what a coincidence," look on his face. "I'm still a little worried, so I came out to take a look." Wu Ming looked at the brown-clothed people who were obviously frightened. "But it seems that I have nothing to do. After all, I can't let you be in the limelight for everything." 16 Knights shrugged and deliberately showed a helpless expression. However, 16 Knights' helplessness made Wu Ming smile helplessly. He could only say that he was indeed a problematic child. What happened? Ren, who was originally awakened after falling asleep, ran over. "As you can see, guard's dirty trick has been taken care of by 16 Knights." Wu Ming shrugged. Then, Wu Ming heard the brown-clothed people whispering. "Such strength, could it be that the rumor of defeating the water god is true? If that's the case, we can be saved." Wu Ming instantly understood that these guys were the pawns of guard who were using the hostages of their community as hostages to control them. "Let me tell you in advance, the hostages in guard's hands have been killed by guard." "What?" After these people heard it, they were all in disbelief. "Our companions here have the ability to make guard reveal the truth. Guard has personally told us to kill the hostages directly." Wu Ming added. These people were silent. But thinking about it carefully, after those hostages were taken away, they indeed never saw those hostages again. "Wait. Mr. Villo, why did you tell them directly?" Ren looked at Wu Ming with some concern. Ren's meaning was naturally to consider the other party's feelings. After all, the hostages who had been threatened were killed from the beginning, and it was inevitable that some people would not be able to accept it. "I think the little brother did a good job. I don't expect to consider their feelings. These people have helped guard do a lot of such things." 16 Knights said sarcastically. "I'm very sorry. I'm obviously here to harm you, but at this moment, I made a willful request. But please listen to me." Then, the leader spoke out his request. "Guard is relying on the protection of the Demon King to do whatever they want in the outer sect of 2105380. If possible, we hope that you can beat Guard to a pulp in the gift competition tomorrow. Please." A brown-clothed person who looked like the leader walked forward and bowed deeply to Wu Ming and the other two. "Please." The other brown-clothed people also bowed to Wu Ming and the other two. 16 Knights' face showed an expression of, "I was waiting for you to say that." Then, he grabbed Ren's shoulder. "No problem. Guard, the Demon King's minion, will be defeated by the community led by Ren Russell." "Thank you very much." The brown-clothed people responded in unison. And Ren Russell, the 11-year-old child, was stunned on the spot. Hey. A moment later, after Wu Ming gave them some instructions, the brown-clothed people all retreated. Wu Ming and the other two also moved from the courtyard outside to the inside of the house. In the boardroom-like room, 16 Knights was enjoying the night view while Wu Ming was sitting on the sofa reading a book, constantly flipping through it. Wu Ming used his spirit power to take it out when he passed by the library. Ren, on the other hand, stood beside 16 Knights with a pained expression. "Mr. 16 Knights, why did you say that?" Ren was naturally referring to the community led by Ren Russell that 16 Knights mentioned. "Although I accepted your suggestion to take down the Demon King as the goal, but to directly use my name to publicize it, it's a little." To put it bluntly, Ren was embarrassed. "Just forgive 16 Knights this time, Ren. After all, the only person our community can bring out is the leader." Black Rabbit's identity was special, so naturally, it could not be used for publicity. Wu Ming and the other three were newcomers who had just joined the community, and they did not have the chance to show their strength. Even the news of them defeating the water god was spread in an unreliable way. So, only Ren Russell, the leader, was left to publicize. "Well, there's nothing bad about it. After all, you're the leader of the community, Ren." 16 Knights smiled gently. That's right. Just accept it. Wu Ming flipped through the pages while persuading. Since things had come to this, Ren could only nod. Speaking of which, little brother, what did you say to those people? I'm very curious. 16 Knights asked. It's nothing big. I just told them that no name can restore their community's freedom. But in return, I hope that those who did such things can turn themselves in early to atone for the children killed by guard. After all, it was not something shameful, so Wu Ming said it casually. After all, even if they were forced, it could not hide the fact that they were guards' accomplices. Although their crimes did not warrant death, they still had to accept the necessary punishment. You're really kind, little brother, 16 Knights Reversal said in a mocking and praising tone. Turning themselves in early and pleading guilty after being caught were two different concepts. The former would definitely be dealt with lightly. The ordinary laws of other worlds stipulated this, so the laws of the United States of America were not much different. It could be said that Wu Ming's actions were actually helping those people. It's just a suggestion. It's up to them whether they listen or not. Wu Ming said casually, his eyes still on the book in his hand. Of course, it was not that Wu Ming looked down on those people, but there were definitely not many who were willing to turn themselves in early. After all, this was also a gamble. What if no name lost after turning themselves in? Opportunities would not wait. If they could not seize the opportunity, it was not Wu Ming's problem. At this time, the door of the conference room was pushed open. "Ah, is everyone here?" The owner of the voice asked with some surprise. Chapter 582. Did something happen? Jiu Yuao asked Wu Ming and the others. Wu Ming raised his head and looked at the newcomers. It was Jiu Yuao, Haruai Hiroyuki, and Kurorobi. Looking at the three's still damp hair, Wu Ming speculated that the three of them might have just finished bathing. When they passed by, they noticed the light and came in to take a look. So you guys didn't sleep? I thought you guys were all asleep. Wu Ming put down the book in his hand when he saw everyone coincidentally gathered together. After dinner, Black Rabbit took us to the no-name bathhouse. There is a place where we can take a bath. It took us some time. Haruhi Pikari said as he hugged the three-furred cat. There were still water droplets on his hair. Although it wasn't that he couldn't understand, Wu Ming still had the mentality of complaining about the girl taking so long to take a bath. But this also explained why Jiu Yuao and the others didn't know what happened. No Name's bathhouse was also underground, and the location of the entrance was quite hidden from outsiders. This was mentioned when Ren and Kurorobi brought Wu Ming and the others to visit the room. But if Jiu Yuao and Haruai Hiroyuki knew that they missed a good show, they would probably be angry. As for why Ren was disturbed by 16th Knight's explosion and the other children weren't disturbed, it was because 16th Knight obviously went easy on them and didn't use so much strength. Secondly, Ren's place was closest to the brown-clothed man and 16th Knight. Otherwise, Ren wouldn't have been able to get dressed in such a short time. Ren's place was close to 16th Knight and the brown-clothed man's place. It could only be said that it was a coincidence. I have to say, the bathhouse here is quite good. Jiu Yufei stretched her back lazily. Coupled with the clothes she was wearing, Jiu Yufei looked quite charming even though she hadn't fully developed yet. This clothes suits you. Wu Ming looked at Jiu Yuao's clothes and commented. The clothes that Flying Bird was originally wearing were gone, replaced by a bright red princess dress that reached her ankles. Thank you. Jiu Yu and Flying Bird bowed to Wu Ming. Well, you're welcome. It's just that the size doesn't fit. Hearing Wu Ming's words, Jiu Fei Niao immediately reacted. His face turned red as he covered his chest. Because the clothes were made with the body of a black rabbit, a healthy black rabbit naturally couldn't be the same size as a bird that hadn't developed much. Pervert. Shut up. Jiao Fei now instinctively used his grace. As soon as Zhou Yuan Flying Bird said that, Wuming felt as if he had been shackled. However, in an instant, those shackles were broken by Wuming. Is this the effect of your grace? Using the spirit of speech to control? Wuming pondered, feeling the state just now. It doesn't work. This was the first time Zhou Yuan Flying Bird's ability failed. It's not that it doesn't work. It's just that it's more difficult for you to control someone who is stronger than you. Wuming didn't mind Flying Bird using his grace on him. After all, he was the one who teased her first. Just like me, your grace did have an effect on me. However, because I'm much stronger than you, the moment you tried to control me, I broke free from your control. Wuming explained enthusiastically. However, that's also related to the user's lack of development. Hearing Wuming's words, Zhou Yuan Flying Bird's expression darkened. That can't be helped. I don't want to control others. Hearing this, Wuming's gaze wavered. That. Everyone, if there's nothing else, let's go to sleep. After all, we still have to compete with Forsgaro tomorrow. Black Rabbit quickly mediated. After all, tomorrow's grace competition was the first grace competition for No Name after the new members joined. Naturally, they had to take it seriously. Looking at the moon outside, it was indeed very late. Wuming agreed. If you have anything to say, let's save it for tomorrow. You should know that staying up late isn't good for a girl's skin. This teasing sentence made Flying Bird, Yao, and Black Rabbit quickly return to their rooms. Wuming and Ren greeted each other and returned to their room under 16 Nights' teasing gaze. The next morning, Jiao Fei Niao, Kasuga Tribe's Yahajin Russell, accompanied by Wuming, 16 Nights Reverse, and Black Rabbit, walked towards the Forsgaro base. By the way, Flying Bird's clothes had already been adjusted by Black Rabbit. Because No Name was the challenger, the content and venue of the competition were decided by Forsgaro. This time, Forsgaro's competition venue was set in the residential area. There were 3 types of areas in the box court world. The stage area for competitions, the free area for business and entertainment, and the residential area for eating and living. This time, Forsgaro held the grace competition in their residential area. Wuming didn't have any doubts about this result. After all, it was better to play dirty in one's own territory. However, this didn't mean that Wuming wouldn't do anything. At this time, 16 Nights, who was walking at the back, started a conversation with Wuming, who was also walking at the back. By the way, you're really cruel, little brother. 16 Nights was referring to the incident where Wuming instigated the brown-shirt men to turn themselves in last night. After all, they did make a mistake. It's not something that can be made up for by helping us fight against Forsgaro. Wuming shrugged his shoulders. While talking with 16 Nights, Wuming also controlled his mental strength to explore the community of Forsgaro. Wuming didn't think that the other party wouldn't think of other ways after their dirty trick failed. Wuming and 16 Nights weren't afraid of the other party's dirty tricks, but it was hard to say for Jiu Yuasuka, Haruhito Yayoi, and Ren who were preparing to participate in this grace competition. After all, the 3 people's grace competitions weren't directly lethal. Therefore, Wuming prepared to use his mental strength to check the current situation of Forsgaro for everyone. Well, as long as you're happy. 16 Nights didn't pay attention to this matter. Anyway, even if they didn't turn themselves in, after Forsgaro was defeated, the secret would naturally be exposed. At that time, as the ruler of the East District, Byakuya wouldn't ignore it. 16 Nights knew this, so he didn't care about those people. What are Mr. 16 Nights and Mr. Villo talking about? Black Rabbit noticed the conversation between Wuming and 16 Nights and asked curiously. It's nothing. We were just discussing how to cook the rabbit to make it tastier. 16 Knights smiled at the Black Rabbit. How could Black Rabbit not know that he was teased by 16 Knights again? "Mr. 16 Knights, you big idiot," Black Rabbit said as he took out a paper fan and hit 16 Knights on the head. Although he didn't know why 16 Knights didn't say anything, Wuming didn't want to say anything about what happened last night. After all, it wasn't a big deal, so there was no need to take care of everything. At this time, Wuming's mental strength sensed that something was wrong. Something happened to Forsgaro. Ha! Chapter 583. After everyone heard Wuming's words, they hurriedly ran towards the Forsgaro's base. It wasn't that everyone was concerned about Forsgaro, it was just that Forsgaro's mishap happened at the wrong time. Although it was beneficial for one side to have an accident, Forsgaro had an accident right before the start of the gift match. This made it easy for people to think that Forsgaro was unscrupulous in order to win. Even though the bestowment competition would naturally be cancelled and No Name would not be able to gain any benefits, it would still inevitably bring negative influence to No Name. From an outsider's point of view, this was how things were. The biggest community in the outer sect, 2105380, had met with trouble on the eve of the bestowment competition with No Name, who had been attacked by the Demon King. It must have been a mere No Name who played a dirty trick. From an outsider's point of view, this was the truth of the matter. Once the outside world thought that No Name was a community that relied on underhanded means to survive, it would be terrible. It must be known that without a banner or a name, it would be very troublesome for No Name to rise to prominence. If this infamy was added to No Name, then No Name would really be unable to reverse the situation. Of course, this was all just guesswork. The future could not be predicted. What everyone needed to do now was to find out what happened to Forsgaro as soon as possible. Because they were already very close to Forsgaro's base, after Wuming said that something happened to Forsgaro, everyone only needed to jog to reach Forsgaro's designated competition area. It was a manor that occupied a large area. The manor's door was tightly shut. Through the walls, they could see the lush trees growing in the manor. There was nothing out of the ordinary. However, this seemingly peaceful manor was filled with a deathly silence. This did not match the bestowment competition that was about to be held. Something is wrong. Black Rabbit was slightly afraid as he pulled back his rabbit ears. Without saying anything else, Wuming walked directly to the manor's main door. He reached out his hand and gently pushed the door open. "Wait a minute, Mr. Villo. We haven't confirmed the final personnel yet. The door to the gift competition venue can't be opened." However, Black Rabbit stopped halfway through its sentence. The gate of the manor was easily pushed open by Wuming, revealing a quiet forest. Wuming's footsteps did not stop as he directly walked in. Then, the three problem children followed Wuming's footsteps and walked through the door. It was open just like that, and other people were allowed to enter. Does that mean the gift competition has been cancelled? Although 16 Knights didn't go to the library last night, he still learned a lot of information from Ren. The venue that was designated as the venue for the gift competition could not be forcibly entered unless the gift competition was cancelled. Only then would one be allowed to enter. However, even if the gift competition was cancelled, this was still the residential area of Orescaro. Let's not talk about the fact that people could enter this place at will. Even if the gift competition was cancelled, there should still be guards in the residential area. But now, the entire forest was silent as if it was dead. There was not a single trace of human presence. What if the gift competition was cleared? Wuming suddenly said. This made everyone think for a moment. Even though we don't know the details of the match, we can tell that this place is a lush forest. We can guess that the match will be a blessing match to find something in the forest or kill an enemy. Wuming took 2 steps forward and arrived at the edge of the forest. If that's the case, the enemy can't be outside, but inside. After all, Guard knew about the powerful abilities of Juyuki Asuka and Haruhito Yayoi, so they definitely wouldn't use open means. And if it was really as Wuming guessed, Guard might have ambushed them secretly. If there was a powerful person who came here in advance and got rid of Fog Garo, then there would be such a quiet scene. That's what you're guessing, right, little brother? 16 Knights walked to Wuming's side with his hands on his head. But it's also possible that the powerful person hacked into Orescaro last night, and that's why it's like this now. After all, if Orescaro started the gift competition that only No Name could participate, then the other party wouldn't be able to do anything. It had to be said that the Hakata world was really a magical place. The power of the gift competition was spread throughout the entire Hakata. Black Rabbit, I'll have to trouble you to obtain some information from the center of the box court. Ask if the bestowment competition has been held here. Wuming looked at Black Rabbit as he spoke. As a noble of the Hakata, Black Rabbit's ears were connected to the Hakata Center. This was also why you Rabbit, a noble of the Hakata, often acted as a referee. If a noble of the Hakata favored either side as a referee, they would instantly explode and die. This also made the contestants and the organizers feel quite relieved. After all, if you Rabbit favored one side as a referee, the consequences would be severe. She could also tell everyone that the referee had broken the rules, so why not? By the way, Black Rabbit was the referee for the gift competition between No Name and Orescaro today. But because of this, Wuming asked Black Rabbit to get information from the Hakata Center. Although Black Rabbit couldn't access the Hakata Center as easily as browsing the internet, he could still ask about the scheduled gift competition. Yes, Black Rabbit will do it now. With that said, Black Rabbit closed its eyes, its ears constantly moving. In just a few seconds, Black Rabbit opened his eyes. You're right, Mr. Vero. The bestowment contest that was supposed to take place here never happened. Since this was the case, Wuming and the others had already entered the scheduled competition venue, and no one from Orescaro's side had appeared. Perhaps Orescaro was really defeated. Could it be that a demon king attacked Orescaro last night? Ren frowned and said with some worry. It couldn't be said that Ren's worries were groundless. Because, only a demon king would dare to attack Orescaro, which was a legitimate community on the surface. It's hard to say at the moment. After all, crimes that have not been discovered are not illegal in the Hakata. Wuming shook his head. They couldn't rule out the possibility that another community had attacked Orescaro at night and wanted to take the opportunity to frame No Name. It was still the same saying, crimes that have not been discovered are not crimes. Just like how guards secretly kidnapped other community members and used this as a threat to force the other community to block the flag of the gift competition. However, Wuming was more inclined to believe that a powerful person had attacked Orescaro. The reason was the extremely silent forest in front of him. It wasn't that Wuming looked down on people, but in the outer door of 2105380, there was no community that had such power. Otherwise, the largest community in the outer door of 2105380 would not be Orescaro, but other communities. Of course, all of this had to exclude No Name at the moment. Take 16th Knights, who had a short fight with Wuming, as an example. After reading the books about the combat power of the Hakata in No Name's underground library, Wuming conservatively estimated that 16th Knights was in the lower level of the Hakata. Among the 6 and 7 digits, there was no one who could compete with him. Even among the 5 digits in the middle level, 16th Knights was considered one of the best. However, because Wuming had not specifically fought with 16th Knights, it was difficult to determine which number 16th Knights belonged to. However, what was certain was that people like Wuming and 16th Knights could completely eliminate a 7-digit community in one night. Of course, people like 16th Knights who were more violent would definitely not clean up the battlefield so cleanly. In short, Wuming believed that this place was attacked by a powerful person. However, why would the other party attack Forsgaro the day before Forsgaro and No Name's gift match? Even if they wanted to seek revenge, it would be too much of a coincidence. Or rather, the other party's target is actually No Name. Wuming said lightly as he closed his eyes. In an instant, everyone felt that something had passed through their bodies. Chapter 584. Everyone felt that their bodies were penetrated by something. It was the result of Wuming's mental power being released without any concealment. Everyone also knew that Wuming was using his mental power to detect something, so they didn't disturb Wuming. Wuming was naturally looking for the guy who attacked Forsgaro. Wuming had an intuition that if the other party came for No Name, then at this moment, the other party must be monitoring the situation here. This quiet manner was the best protection, wasn't it? However, the other party probably didn't know that Wuming was a radar that could scan a large area. In just an instant, Wuming's mental power enveloped the entire manor, and a spiritual map appeared in Wuming's heart. In the manor, there was only a bungalow in the center. Guard and what seemed to be guard subordinates were lying unconscious in the house. However, they didn't seem to be dead. It seems that the attacker wasn't a bad person. Wuming thought. Just knocking out guard and the others who had committed the most heinous crimes instead of killing them was already a very kind existence in Silent Wonder's eyes. At this moment, at the edge of Wuming's perception, a shadow quickly rushed out of the manor. Found it. Wuming suddenly opened his eyes and looked in the direction of the shadow. Over there. As if receiving a signal, 16 Knights suddenly bent his body and then stomped on the ground with one foot. His whole body was like a cannonball that rushed in the direction Wuming was looking at. The ground where 16th Knight had been was now covered in spiderweb-like cracks. This made Rin rustle, who had never seen 16 Knights explode, dumbfounded. There is a bungalow in this forest. Guard and the others are unconscious inside. You guys be careful and go take a look. I'll meet up with 16 Knights. After all, the bungalow in the forest was not difficult to find. Wuming just gave a simple explanation. After Wuming finished speaking, a black hole appeared in front of him. Wuming suddenly plunged into the black hole. Immediately after, the black hole shrank and disappeared. Ren was dumbfounded as he watched the two of them leave in different but equally bizarre ways. Mr. 16 Knights and Mr. Villo. They are both very powerful people. Outside the manor, a black-purple ripple suddenly appeared on the path that the black shadow had to take to escape. The black figure did not have the slightest intention of stopping. Then, with a movement that was quite strange in the eyes of ordinary people, it changed direction without slowing down by 90 degrees and continued to flee. When an obstacle appeared in front of him, the black shadow did the same thing as before and immediately changed direction. However, now, you have nowhere to run. Wuming's voice came from the beginning of the black ripple. Immediately after, Wuming's figure walked out of the black portal. These silver chains were naturally the pseudo-heavenly lock, a fake created by Wuming on the spot. After all, the real thing was basically used on Hercules, who was sunk by Wuming in the American continent. Those black ripples were the portal that Wuming had shrunk. Those openings were just to allow the pseudo-heavenly lock to connect with each other and form a cage to trap the enemy like now. Now, abilities such as the portal and create advanced item no longer required Wuming to chant. He could release them with just a thought. This was also thanks to the development of Wuming's mental power. The place that was detected by Wuming's mental power also became a place that Wuming had been in disguise, so the portal could be used normally. Wuming looked at the black shadow in the cage. Just as he was about to say something, a voice interrupted Wuming. Oh, am I late? 16 Knights also rushed over at this moment. After all, the distance was not far. Coupled with the speed of 16 Knights, it was not difficult to find this place in less than a minute. Although an incomparably silent forest would bring fear to intruders, if they became hunters, then the silent forest would become the best way for hunters to find prey. After all, among a lot of motionless things, the moving thing was the most conspicuous. Then, 16 Knights Reversal laughed as if he was complaining. "Little brother, you actually have such a convenient thing, how cunning." Obviously, the scene of Wu Ming walking out of the portal was seen by 16 knights who rushed over. "It's all because you're too excited." Wu Ming shook his head helplessly. He originally wanted to use the portal with 16 knights, but as soon as Wu Ming said, "Found it," 16 knights directly rushed in the direction that Wu Ming was looking at. After all, this is a big shot who killed the suspected demon king of Orescaro. "How can I give it to you?" 16 knights laughed wildly. However, 16 knights looked at the black shadow that was trapped by Wu Ming's unknown chain cage and smacked his lips unhappily. "But since you came first, I won't fight with you this time." 16 knights looked at the villa with an expression that said, "You got a big deal," and also gave Wu Ming a "good luck, I'm looking forward to it" gesture. This made Wu Ming a little embarrassed. Not to mention whether the other party was the Demon King or not, they were still not sure whether the other party was an enemy or not. They might not even be able to fight. However, the necessary contact was necessary. "Then, the person hiding in the shadows, you can come out now," Wu Ming said as he looked at the mysterious black shadow shrouded in the pseudo-heavenly lock cage. As if giving up, the shadow gradually dispersed, revealing the person hidden in the shadows. It was a lowly with curly blonde hair that reached her waist with a large bow tied behind her head. She was wearing a red jacket, black underwear, and a long gray tie. She was wearing a white fabric that looked like shorts, a short skirt, and a jacket. There were also 4 black ribbons that extended from the fabric, fluttering on both sides of her calves. Gray and black striped pantyhose matched with short boots. This outfit made the lowly look very strange. "Oh. I didn't expect it to be a blonde lowly. I have never fought with a lowly before." 16 knights looked at Wu Ming with a face of happiness. However, Wu Ming really couldn't agree with 16 knights' thinking. Shouldn't a normal person's first reaction when seeing a beautiful lowly would be to think that she was cute or something like that? Why did 16 knights look like she wanted to fight with her? But looking at it from another perspective, 16 knights' approach wasn't wrong. After all, the other party was also the big shot that finished Forsgaro in one night. No matter how weak Forsgaro was, in the eyes of 16 knights, this blonde lowly was an existence that could act as a demon king. "Since you've revealed yourself, it means that you're willing to talk to us. Then, can you tell me who you are, Miss Vampire?" Wu Ming asked the blonde lowly, his ruby-like eyes looking at the blonde lowly's red eyes. The blonde lowly was obviously stunned, but she recovered in an instant. "Oh, you know my background the first time we meet. You're really not bad, little brother." However, in the face of 16 knights teasing, Wu Ming chose to ignore it, his eyes were still looking at the blonde lowly. "My name is Letitia de Crea, I was once a companion of No Name." The blonde lowly, or Letitia, directly stated her identity. This time it was Wu Ming's turn to be stunned. Wu Ming really didn't think that the other party would be so honest and directly state her name. As for No Name being a companion, Wu Ming chose to believe Letitia. After all, this kind of lie that could be easily exposed would not be used by anyone. "So that's how it is. So that's why you attacked Forsgaro." The community that he used to be in that had declined was bullied by other strong communities. With his strength, he couldn't stand it and wanted to teach those communities a lesson. This made sense. However, Letitia shook her head. "In fact, I originally wanted to use Forsgaro to test the strength of the new members of No Name." As she said this, Letitia's eyes revealed a trace of sadness and determination. This made Wu Ming, who was talking to Letitia, see some clues. It seems that this is also a person with a story. Chapter 585. Letitia gave Wuming the feeling that she was entrusting her child to him. It seemed like she was hiding something. Then, what made you give up on the idea of using Forsgaro, and even defeated them with your own hands? Wuming had already begun to believe that Letitia was a former companion of No Name, because Wuming didn't think that her eyes were deceiving him. If she really had such superb acting skills, then Wuming was willing to admit defeat. Because I saw you. Letitia looked at Wuming as if she was looking at the hope of No Name. This made 16 Knights, who was on the side, narrow his eyes. Looking at Letitia's appearance, it seemed like she had seen Wuming before, or at least seen Wuming's strength. Although Wuming didn't have the impression of seeing Letitia before, Wuming wasn't surprised by Letitia's words. Letitia gave Wuming the impression that she was a fruit that had been hollowed out. She looked strong on the outside, but she didn't have much strength on the inside. In other words, Letitia used to be very strong, but now she had weakened for some unknown reason. No matter what the reason was, Wuming only needed to know that Letitia used to be very strong. Since that was the case, Letitia might have followed the former leader of No Name to excavate Wuming's body. Wuming guessed that it might be because Letitia was also present when No Name was excavating Wuming's body, and for some unknown reason, she had seen Wuming's strength. And now, after Wuming came to this world using his spiritual body, he didn't deliberately suppress his abilities, so Letitia might have seen some clues. Have you seen my body before? Wuming suddenly asked. Letitia nodded her head very naturally. Your body was in No Name's base, but 3 years ago, it was taken away by the Demon King who attacked No Name. Wuming, who had been to No Name, naturally knew about this. Then, why are you so sure that my body is the existence buried under your land? This was indeed a problem. After Wuming came to this world, other than the fact that he didn't restrain his aura and pressure at the beginning, he had basically kept it hidden. And his key abilities weren't exposed much. In the eyes of No Name, Wuming was just a powerful spirit with some special power that could freely travel between worlds. Although 16 Knights might have seen that Wuming wasn't simple, it was still just a guess. But after Wuming and Letitia's conversation, Wuming had confirmed his identity. An unknown life form with powerful strength that had yet to be revealed. Something like that. In any case, Wuming had already sensed 16th Knight's battle intent. Letitia, SSS Letitia is. Letitia's words reminded Wuming of what happened last night. Last night, in order to show off his strength, Wuming did reveal his pressure. But it seemed that this fleeting aura was caught by Letitia. Your aura is exactly the same as your body's aura, incomparably powerful. Letitia, who had followed the leader of the community to excavate Wuming's body, recognized the powerful aura at a glance. Wuming smiled helplessly. It was because Letitia recognized that this new member was the spiritual body of a powerful being that had once been buried under No Name. Letitia decisively gave up on using Forsgaro to test the new member and even taught Forsgaro a lesson. This led to the previous situation. He didn't expect this vampire girl to be so protective. Then, Wuming had a wicked thought. Then, looking at this coincidence, I'll give you the right to choose. Wuming walked to the front of the cage formed by the pseudo-heavenly lock. His footsteps did not stop. Like a ghost, he directly passed through the pseudo-heavenly lock and walked in front of Letitia. Then, Wuming, with a serious face, used his red eyes to stare at Letitia's eyes, which were the same color as his own, and said word by word. Do you want me to protect No Name, or do you want me to pull you back from hell? Letitia was not surprised that Wuming knew her situation was not good. Maybe in her opinion, someone of Wuming's level should know everything. But Wuming was just trying to get information out of her. I choose to let you protect No Name. Letitia said her thoughts without hesitation. Even 3 years ago, Letitia could not recognize what kind of existence Wu Ming's original body was buried under her community. Now that her strength was greatly reduced, she was even more unable to recognize it. But Letitia knew one thing, and that was if No Name was protected by such a big shot, not to mention getting back the previous name and flag, No Name could even go further. Wu Ming closed his eyes when he heard the answer that he expected. Then, Wu Ming smiled and put his hand on Letitia's small head. "You're really a greedy little guy." Even when Wu Ming stroked her head, Letitia's face did not move at all. But Letitia's slightly red cheeks showed that her heart was not calm. "So, you agree?" Letitia raised her head that was slightly lowered because of Wu Ming's touch. But Wu Ming shook his head. "Unfortunately, I can't protect No Name like you said. First of all, Wu Ming's main mission in this world was to find his original body. He only joined No Name because he was touched by Black Rabbit's sentiments of protecting his home and wanted to help them. It could be said that if he did not join No Name, Wu Ming could still find his original body in this world. However, after joining No Name, he obtained information about his original body first. This was something that Wu Ming had to thank No Name. And because Wu Ming's original body was corroded by the Black Origin mud, Wu Ming temporarily could not remove his spiritual body and return to his original body. If he forcefully removed his spiritual body, then Wu Ming would only return to the backup body in the origin. Therefore, Wu Ming had to take one step at a time to find his original body. Secondly, Wu Ming could not stay in this world forever. Although Gidia was injured, it was still a hidden threat. But fortunately, if Gadotzi used the blade of salvation made by the Holy Grail to summon Wu Ming would also be able to sense it. When the time came, Wu Ming could use the Holy Grail version of the blade of salvation as a medium to create a spirit base. Now, Wu Ming could easily control multiple bodies with one mind. Even if it was cross-world control, it was the same. At most, there would be a slight delay in the consciousness of both sides. But Letitia panicked when she heard Wu Ming's rejection. "Please promise me, I'll do anything you want me to." To be honest, although Letitia was not very clear about the 3 newcomers other than Wu Ming, the 3 of them definitely could not be compared to No Name from 3 years ago. As a former demon king who was defeated and absorbed into the former No Name, Letitia was very clear about how powerful this community was in the past. However, such a powerful community was still attacked by the demon king, and in the end became the current No Name. If the enemy who attacked No Name 3 years ago came again, the 3 newcomers would not be able to resist at all. In Letitia's opinion, only Wu Ming had the ability to protect the current No Name. During the confrontation with the Demon King, Letitia remembered that when Wu Ming's original body fought against the Demon King, the power produced even affected the Demon King's gift competition. But because Wu Ming's original body was always asleep, Letitia's community ended up becoming No Name. However, due to the influence of the previous battle, the enemies were more interested in the treasures hidden in this land. If it weren't for the fact that Letitia still remembered the enemy's panicked look, she would have thought that they were here because of Wu Ming's main body. In short, Letitia believed that as the soul of the powerful existence under the land, Wu Ming had the ability to protect No Name. Chapter 586. As you can see, I am the soul, and that is the body. Because I fought with a powerful enemy, the two were separated, and the body was lost in this world. Wu Ming patiently explained to Letitia. My first task is to find my body and pursue that enemy. In other words, I can't stay in No Name for long, so I can't protect No Name according to your request. However, Wu Ming's words had a big impact on Letitia. Wu Ming fought with an enemy outside the world, and his body was lost in the box court. This was the feeling of a super powerhouse. And reverse 16 knights, who chose to be a listener, looked at Wu Ming with a burning gaze. Don't get me wrong, it was a gaze full of fighting intent. But being stared at by a man with a burning gaze made Wu Ming quite uncomfortable. However, if it's at the cost of yourself, I can fulfill your wish. Directly ignoring Reverse 16 Knight's gaze, Wu Ming whispered in Letitia's ear like a demon. Wu Ming was not idle in the underground library of No Name yesterday. Wu Ming found something related to vampires. The sky in each area of the box court had a layer of curtain that could allow creatures unable to live under the sun to live normally, and the first such creature to bear the brunt was vampires. Therefore, vampires who came to the box court began to spontaneously maintain the stability of the box court. Therefore, vampires in the box court were called the Knights of the Box Court. Wu Ming could see that Letitia's strength was not weak, but for some reason, she lost her power. If Letitia regained her strength, Wu Ming could enhance Letitia's strength, and protect No Name would not be a problem. As for the enemies that Letitia was worried about, Wu Ming naturally thought of them. However, those who dared to touch the body of the root dragon, whether they could withstand the wrath of the root dragon and survive was still a question. I understand. Letitia was stunned. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and nodded with a red face. However, Wu Ming saw all of this, and Wu Ming was willing to bet that Letitia must have misunderstood. Oh, little bro, you finally can't help but make a move on this golden-haired lowly. 16 Knights Reverse fanned the flames as he saw that Lu Huai was not meddling in other people's business. This guy definitely understood that what Wu Ming said was completely different from what Letitia was thinking. If you have nothing better to do, go and meet up with Black Rabbit and the others. You should be satisfied after hearing so many things that others don't know. Wu Ming waved his hand at Reverse 16 Knights in disdain. No problem. Then, as the price, if you have the chance, you must have a good fight with me. 16 Knights didn't care whether Wu Ming agreed or not. He laughed wildly and ran away. This guy actually didn't cause any trouble this time. Wu Ming looked at 16 Knights Reverse 16 Knights who disappeared into the woods in surprise. Although Wu Ming had just met 16 Knights Reverse 16 Knights, Wu Ming thought that he already knew 16 Knights Reverse 16 Knights very well. He was a proper problem child. However, although 16 Knights Reverse 16 Knights was a problem child, he followed Wu Ming's wishes this time. He didn't get ready to fight with Wu Ming after hearing the conversation between Wu Ming and Letitia. He also listened to Wu Ming's words and went to meet up with Black Rabbit and the others. Although 16 Knights Reverse 16 Knights unilaterally made an agreement with Wu Ming, this was already very good. Then. Do you like this body type or the body type of an adult? I can change into it. Letitia said as she started to take off her clothes with a red face. Wait a moment. Wu Ming looked helpless. Wu Ming quickly put his hand on Letitia's half-taken-off red jacket. However, at this moment, in Wu Ming's perception, a person came here at an extremely fast speed. Mr. Villo, Mr. 16 Knights Reverse 16 Knights said you asked me to come over. Black Rabbit bounced over and said naturally. However, Black Rabbit noticed Letitia who was beside Wu Ming. Sigh. Senior Letitia, why are you here? Then, Black Rabbit suddenly realized that Wu Ming and Letitia's current state was a bit off. Wu Ming's hand was placed on Letitia's half-taken-off red jacket. Letitia's face blushed as if she wanted to reject it. Black Rabbit, who had been instilled with evil thoughts by White Yiksha, immediately understood at this moment. You too. Don't tell me. Ah. Then, Black Rabbit suddenly jumped away with a red face. At the same time, Black Rabbit's shy shouts echoed throughout the manor. After helping Letitia put on the red jacket, Wu Ming had an expression of admitting defeat. I knew 16 Knights wouldn't be that obedient. A moment later, in the living room of No Name's base. Black Rabbit and Letitia sat on the bench in the middle. Wuming and Zhou Yuanfei sat on the side facing each other. In other words, Mr. Villo and Senior Letitia don't have the kind of relationship that Black Rabbit thought. Is this just a misunderstanding? Black Rabbit, who sat beside Letitia, sighed. After all this time, she was the one who got it wrong. Letitia's face was also red and she didn't say anything. After all, she was the one who got it wrong in the beginning. So, Miss Zhou Yuanfei, can you take back that perverted gaze? Wuming looked at Zhou Yuanfei, who sat across from him helplessly. Humph. Although it was a misunderstanding, for Zhou Yuanfei, who came from the world just after World War II, Wuming and Letitia's interaction about clothes was rude enough. Wuming could only shrug his shoulders helplessly. When Black Rabbit's scream resounded in the manor, the rest of No Name began to rush over. Wuming also took advantage of this time to explain to Letitia. This caused Letitia's face to turn red once again. When the members of No Name rushed over, only Black Rabbit's face was flushed red. Wuming and Letitia, on the other hand, had calm expressions. However, Letitia's cheeks were still slightly rosy. Rinha Haruai and Zhou Yuanfei didn't understand the situation, but Black Rabbit and 16 Knights knew what happened. It should be that the mastermind behind the scenes, 16 Knights, must know what happened. I say, little brother, you didn't really make a move on this blonde loli, did you? This was what 16 Knights, who was still watching the fun and making a big deal out of it, said. This made Rinha Haruai and Zhou Yuanfei very interested. However, because the follow-up matters of Forsgaro needed to be dealt with by White Yiksha, Rinha Haruai and 16 Knights went to deal with it. Zhou Yuanfei, Black Rabbit, Letitia, and Wuming returned to No Name's base. Then, Wuming told Zhou Yuanfei and Black Rabbit what happened. In addition to Letitia's testimony, Zhou Yuanfei and Black Rabbit didn't have any misunderstandings. On the other hand, Letitia, who was Wuming's witness, blushed. However, that was because Letitia had misunderstood Wuming's meaning. But at this moment, Black Rabbit, who was hugging Letitia, was very happy. To think that you're Letitia-senpai again, Black Rabbit really missed you. Looking at Black Rabbit, who was like a child, Letitia's heart returned to 3 years ago. You've matured a lot, Black Rabbit. After all, in the past 3 years, the community relied on Rinha and Black Rabbit's meager income to barely survive. How could she not mature? Of course, when Letitia said matured, she was hinting at Black Rabbit's unhappiness by constantly squeezing her own fat in front of her chest. But after thinking about Wuming's suggestion, Letitia's face showed a trace of sadness. Although Villo-sama's suggestion is good, but right now, I have no choice. Letitia's words made Black Rabbit stunned, then she had a helpless expression. Black Rabbit, do you know some recent news about Letitia? Wuming asked. Black Rabbit nodded. According to the recent news, Letitia-senpai will be given out as the prize of the gift competition. Then it's as we wish. As long as we participate in the gift competition and win, it'll be fine. Zhou Yuanfei said elegantly and calmly, as if she had already won. But Wuming didn't think that it would be so simple. I'm afraid this method won't work. Along with this sentence, the room door was pushed open. Rinha, 16 Knights, and Kasuga Hiroyuki, who were responsible for dealing with the aftermath of Forsgaro, returned. Chapter 587. Did something happen to Letitia's gift competition? Wuming looked at 16 Knights who spoke before. 16 Knights put her hands in her pockets and walked to a single chair. She sat down and smiled casually. Let's leave the details to the little guy. Ren nodded as he found an empty single chair and sat down. Haruai Hiroyuki walked over to Black Rabbit and Letitia and sat down. In the beginning, Haruai Hiroyuki also knew Letitia's identity in the manor, so he didn't have any doubts. Then, Ren began to explain about Letitia. Let's talk about the Forsgaro first. According to the order of events, Ren began to explain. We found evidence in the Forsgaro's territory. After Lord Byakuya saw the evidence, he was very angry at Guard's actions and said that he would severely punish Forsgaro. Then, Haruai Hiroyuki added. According to Byakuya, Guard's spirit will be removed and sold as food. It's his own fault. It had to be said that this result was really satisfying. The spirit mentioned here was actually similar to the divine spark. It was a tool that could increase the level of one's own species. However, compared to the divine spark, the spirit was not so exaggerated. It was only a partial increase. It was similar to the two definitions of the enhanced version and the degraded version. Then, we asked Byakuya about Letitia's matter. Although no name did have its name, flag, and companions taken by the Demon King, Ren and Black Rabbit still tried very hard to get them back, just like Letitia. In fact, Ren and Black Rabbit already knew Letitia's whereabouts. For some reason, Letitia ended up in a community under the banner of This and Yes. She was also taken out as a prize in the recent gift competition and placed on the table. Then, Ren looked at Letitia with some guilt. Black Rabbit, who was sitting next to Letitia, also lowered her head. After all, her former companions were now used as a prize in the gift competition, but she couldn't do anything about it. That kind of guilt and pain was not something that others could understand. Black Rabbit and Ren, you two don't have to feel guilty. After all, there's nothing we can do about it. Letitia smiled and comforted the two. However, after some thought, the Black Rabbit revealed a smile again. But now that we have a new companion, we will definitely be able to win Senior Letitia back in this gift competition. It's not that simple, Black Rabbit. If it was that simple, Letitia wouldn't have talked to Wuming like she was entrusting him to an orphan. 16th Knights wouldn't have said no to Ancient Flying Bird's method, and Ren wouldn't have looked so miserable since he came in. All of this proved that there was a problem with Letitia's gift contest. Then, Wuming's words were like a bucket of cold water splashed on the Black Rabbit's head. If my guess is correct, the community that took Letitia out as the prize for the bestowment competition has made a decision. Even if it means tarnishing their own community's reputation, they have to forcefully retract their decision to use Letitia as the prize. This sentence caused Black Rabbit's pupils to shrink. How can that be? The community's reputation is extremely important. Black Rabbit said in disbelief. In this world, the reason why the community's name and flag were so important was because these two were the community's signboard. If the shop's signboard was broken, then the shop would be in a slump. Wuming saw this in the underground library. After the bestowment competition was announced, the content could not be changed at will, including the prize. Unless it was a special situation that everyone agreed on, or the organizer was thick-skinned and forcefully repented. However, if that was the case, the community's reputation would be tarnished. No community was willing to cooperate with a community that didn't keep its word. This was especially reflected in this box world. Ren's next words also proved that Wuming was right. Black Rabbit, Mr. Villo is right. According to Lord White Yiksha, the other party is willing to tarnish their own community's reputation to take back Letitia. Ren's face was gloomy. Before, they didn't have the power to save their companion. Now that they had the power, they couldn't save their companion. They obtained hope in despair, but before they could enjoy the joy of hope, they fell into despair once again. Although it wasn't that serious, Ren's heart was currently suffering from the pain of such a strong difference. This was too heavy for an 11-year-old youth who took on the role of a leader. Then what's the reason? The other party has to have a reason to take back Letitia. It couldn't be that the other party suddenly said that they didn't want to take Letitia as a prize and then took her back. If the other party really spoke like a child, who knew how angry Bayasha, the leader of Thous and Yes, would be. The bestowment competition organized by the community was like a country holding a conference. Then, when all the other countries were present, the other party suddenly said that they were canceling. Fortunately, the other contestants were from the lower levels of the box, or else the community they belonged to would definitely find trouble with this community. I heard from Lord White Yikshaw that someone from outside the box offered a high price to buy this blonde lowly. 16th Knight spread out his hands. What? Outside the box, Senior Letitia is a vampire. If she's sold outside the box, she won't be able to survive under the sun. Hey too stood up excitedly. Although the box was also the name of this world, in reality, the box was just a large city that covered almost the entire world. As long as there was an area with a curtain like a shed, it was the box. Since that was the case, the area that wasn't covered by the curtain was the area outside the box. Everyone knew that vampires were afraid of the sun. The vampires in the box world were also what normal people thought. Moreover, as a purebred vampire, Letitia was even more afraid of the sun. In short, if Letitia was sold outside the box, without the protection of the box's curtain, then Letitia would be doomed. If an analogy had to be made, Letitia outside the box, even if she didn't die, she would lose a layer of skin, and it would be the kind that would keep shedding. At that time, perhaps death would become a relief. Letitia silently pulled on Hey-Two's arm, indicating for Hey-Two to calm down. As expected, in the face of benefits, the other party directly chose to sacrifice the community's reputation. The leader of this community wouldn't be some rich second-generation character, right? Wu Ming ridiculed rather unhappily. Letitia, you actually already knew about this, right? Wu Ming looked at Letitia. I indeed knew before leaving that cage. Letitia seemed to have accepted her fate as she nodded expressionlessly. It was because Letitia knew that she was about to be sold that she sacrificed a seemingly large price in exchange for the right to temporarily move before leaving the box. It was all to see the result of no name. The people here weren't idiots. If she didn't pay a price, as an item, how could Letitia be allowed to move freely? It was also because Letitia knew that she was about to be sold that she didn't feel at ease with no name and wanted to test the newcomer. It was also because Letitia knew that she was about to be sold, and when she realized that Wu Ming was an extremely powerful existence, Letitia racked her brains to ask Wu Ming for help. It was also because Letitia knew that she was about to be sold, and when she misunderstood Wu Ming's words of using herself as the price, Letitia unhesitatingly prepared to give herself to Wu Ming. Everything was for this once home, a home that she would never see again. It could be said that Letitia was simply like an idiot. For this home, she practically gave up everything. However, a lot of people often liked this kind of idiot. Then, do you want to consider my proposal? Wu Ming very calmly looked at Letitia. Two pairs of red eyes looked at each other, just like when they first met. Chapter 588. However, Wu Ming's words confused everyone present. As the person involved, Letitia understood what Wu Ming meant. After all, Wu Ming had already told her what he meant. But even so, Letitia still shook her head helplessly. But... Master Villo, I'll be sold out of the box soon. Moreover, I've also lost my divinity. I really can't become the guardian of no name like you said. What? Senior Letitia, you've lost your divinity. After hearing Letitia's words, Black Rabbit was shocked and his hair slightly changed color. Yes, that's right. I use my divinity as the price in exchange for a period of time where I can move freely. After all, as an item, the only price that Letitia could pay was her most precious thing, her divinity, which was worth this price. And because of this, Letitia's strength was greatly reduced. Wu Ming estimated that Letitia's current strength was probably less than 1/10 of her original strength. Although Wu Ming still didn't understand the division of strength in the box, according to Wu Ming's estimation, Letitia's current strength had fallen to the bottom of the 5-digit range, close to the 6-digit range. Senior Letitia. Realizing the price that Letitia paid, Black Rabbit's eyes began to moisten and his voice began to choke. It had to be said that the price was a bit too high. However, Wu Ming still asked Letitia. Putting aside the current disadvantages, Letitia, let me ask you, do you accept my proposal? I accept. Letitia nodded. Although she didn't understand Wu Ming's meaning, she could only honestly say her true thoughts at this moment. Wu Ming smiled, and 16 knights who saw through Wu Ming's thoughts also smiled. Then everyone, let's go negotiate with the other party. Knight, 21053880 Outer Gate, Thous and Yes, Branch. White Yiksha used a paper fan to cover the lower half of his face and looked with interest at Wu Ming, 16 knights, Black Rabbit, and the leader of the community, Ren, sitting in front of him. It's really rare to visit at this time. Do you and No Name have something to ask of us? Although it was a question, White Yiksha, who asked it in a declarative tone, undoubtedly knew the thoughts of No Name. Let's get straight to the point, White Yiksha. Can you help us contact the leader of the community where Letitia is currently at? Wu Ming said bluntly. This made Ren tremble in fear. After all, the other party was the star spirit of Tai Yang and Bai Yi, the current ruler of the hierarchy, White Yiksha. Shouldn't he be more polite when speaking? However, White Yiksha was not a person who would stick to trifles. He did not mind Wu Ming's words. To be honest, I don't want to see the guy who violated the agreement and brought shame to Thous and Yes. From the looks of it, White Yiksha also knew that the other party had cancelled the gift competition with Letitia as the prize. However, Wu Ming wasn't surprised by White Yiksha's reaction. No matter what, the other party was still a community under the banner of Thous and Yes. Just the fact that they cancelled the gift competition because they wanted to take back the prize made Thous and Yes feel a lot of shame. After all, even if it was the other party's responsibility, the other party was still a community under the banner of Thous and Yes. It was also because of this that White Yiksha had a disgusted expression. But since Black Rabbit is here, I'll kindly tell you. White Yiksha stared at Black Rabbit's full chest and smiled slyly. This made Black Rabbit hug her chest uncomfortably. However, Wu Ming once again realized that finding White Yiksha with Black Rabbit was as useful as getting a pass. I don't know when you found out about it. I found out this morning. White Yiksha began to explain. The community that held the ownership of Letitia was called Perseus. It was a mid-level 5-digit community. The leader of the community was Luos Perseus. According to White Yiksha, he was a vulgar hedonist with a rough personality. Moreover, according to White Yiksha, the other party had been coveting the aristocrats of the box court for a long time but never had the chance. Ahem, please get to the point, Lord White Yiksha. Wu Ming coughed and slightly emphasized the word Lord. Ahem. In short, the other party's leader came to me today and said that he wanted to cancel the gift competition with Letitia. This made me angry for a while. It had to be said that White Yiksha was really responsible. As a cadre of Thous and Yes, White Yiksha was furious that Perseus had damaged Thous and Yes' reputation. However, White Yiksha's anger was of no use. Perseus was willing to pay double the compensation and use some special methods to make the scheduled contestants give up the competition. Although these methods were indeed special, in a situation where it wasn't a gift competition and there was no evidence, even White Yiksha, a leader of the hierarchy, couldn't do anything about it. The box court world was extremely free, but in some ways, it also had unparalleled restrictions. In this box court world, sometimes legal procedures were more useful than anything else. After all, the box court system was an invincible existence. In the box court world, one had to follow the box court game to live. This was set by all the gods and Buddhas who first created the box court. No one could change it. Breaking the contract and canceling the gift competition only required the payment of the penalty and the agreement of the scheduled contestants. Of course, there was also the invisible damage to the community's reputation. But the other party didn't make any contact with us. Ren frowned. Although Wuming, 16 Knights, and the other two didn't join No Name when they signed up for the competition, even if No Name wasn't strong enough, they still had to try. Letitia was worried about No Name, and everyone in No Name was also worried about Letitia. Even if they knew they would fail, even if they weren't strong enough, No Name would definitely participate in this gift competition. Because in No Name's view, this wasn't a normal gift competition, but a battle to take back the only partner they had seen in 3 years. The reason why Black Rabbit summoned 16 Knights and the others at this time was also to replenish their combat power. But in the end, who would have thought that the other party would cancel the gift competition without the consent of all the scheduled contestants? After hearing Ren's words, White Yiksha had an "I knew it" expression. I thought so too. Let's not talk about the fact that it's impossible for Luos to contact you. Even if he did contact you and asked you to give up, you would never give up. Only when it came to their companions, No Name would never give up. But I think that Luos probably thought that No Name didn't need to be notified and made the decision on his own. Wuming said without thinking. But no one refuted this sentence. After all, although it was cruel, No Name without a name was indeed often looked down upon by other communities. Then, based on this point, White Yiksha, can you let the other party come over for a discussion? 16 Knights asked. We're begging you, Lord White Yiksha. Please help us. Black Rabbit also had a pleading attitude. Please. Ren also bowed to White Yiksha. At this time, White Yiksha smiled and revealed an expression that said, I've been waiting for you for a long time. We already guessed your request. When you first arrived here, we notified Luos. Now, he should be here. At this time, a frivolous man's voice entered everyone's ears. Oh, isn't this you too? It really felt like speaking of the devil. A young man with gold and black hair, a collar around his neck, and boots walked in. He looked like a rich second-generation young master. This guy should be Luos. Everyone looked at the rich second-generation young master who walked in and developed feelings of disgust. Even Wuming had to admit that this guy was an annoying existence. It was as if he had a taunting aura around him. As expected, there is you Tuesday otherwise, my meaningless journey would have been wasted, Luos said casually. He said it as if Black Rabbit was already in his bag. Alright, Luos. Regarding the matter of you canceling the gift competition without the consent of No Name, we have to start the discussion. Please show some of the temperament a leader should have. Discussion. What kind of joke are you making? If it wasn't for you two, why would I come here to discuss with a mere No Name? Luos looked at Wuming and the others mockingly, then complained to White Yiksha. However, he did not notice the coldness that flashed across Wuming's eyes. Chapter 589. Hey, you guys want that vampire, right? I'm very reasonable. Just give me Moon Rabbit in exchange. Luos had an expression that said, I'm very tolerant, you guys better be sensible. Immediately after, Luos looked at Black Rabbit with a lecherous expression. Please allow me to refuse. Black Rabbit covered her exposed skin with her hands and had an expression that said she would rather die than submit. You're really despicable. Black Rabbit is our No Name's exclusive bunny girl. No one else has the right to have her. 16 Knights had an expression of righteous indignation. That's right, Black Rabbit's no-name, exclusive bunny, no. Wait a minute. Black Rabbit isn't a bunny girl. Black Rabbit, who had been abducted, repeated 16th Night's words. Halfway through, it reacted and refuted 16th Night. Mr. 16 Nights is a big idiot. As she spoke, Black Rabbit took out a paper fan and hit 16 Night's head. However, Luos was amused by this. Ha ha ha. I can only say that as expected of a no-name. If you guys act as comedians, I might reward the two of you. Luos looked at Wuming and the others as if they were clowns. Then I really have to thank you. 16 Nights wasn't angry. Instead, he smiled and responded. Enough fooling around. Wuming interrupted Luos and 16 Nights. Mr. Luos, right? I would like to ask, who wants to buy Letitia? If possible, please tell me the price. Wuming looked at Luos with a serious and kind tone. That won't do. Luos shrugged his shoulders with an arrogant and helpless look. I have to protect the privacy of my customers. How can I casually reveal my customers' information? However, the words protect the privacy of my customers did not appear on Luos, who didn't keep his words. Instead, it was very ironic. However, from Wuming's point of view, Luos said this on purpose. Oh, to put it simply, you think that no-name is easy to bully, so you're deliberately making things difficult for us. Wuming said bluntly. Even so, Wuming's tone was still very kind. Coupled with this sentence, it gave people the feeling that he was admitting defeat. Mr. Villo. Rinha and Black Rabbit looked at Wuming in surprise. Of course, they were not surprised by Wuming's cowardice, but by Wuming's straightforward words. After all, this discussion was only a discussion in name. Was it really appropriate to speak the truth so bluntly? Although this kind of feeling of admitting defeat was also quite disturbing. When Renhi Black Rabbit opened his mouth to speak, 16 Nights stretched out his hand and blocked Renhi Black Rabbit, indicating that the two should not speak. However, 16 Nights didn't admit defeat. He knew that Wuming already had a plan. Don't be fooled by 16 Nights and lose happy conversation before, but the cold glint in 16 Nights' eyes proved his inner thoughts. Don't be fooled by rebellious 16 Nights' usual sloppy appearance. Rebellious 16 Nights had deep feelings for this new home of No Name. Wuming once asked 16 Nights why he joined No Name. I won't let go of the chance to fight with Lord Demon King. I'm someone who will be moved by the truth. That was what 16 Nights told Wuming at the time. Because it was exciting to fight with the Demon King, he was moved and joined No Name. But from Wuming's point of view, rebellious 16 Nights joined No Name not only because he could fight with the Demon King, but also because he was moved by the truth. For the sake of a No Name, Black Rabbit had been constantly running around for the past 3 years, trying his best to maintain No Name. He even sold his body to White Yiksha. Don't think too much. It was just that White Yiksha said that if Black Rabbit wore the clothes she provided, Black Rabbit's reward as a referee would increase. Ren also took on the responsibility of a community leader at the age of 11, when he should have grown up under the protection of his parents, for the sake of No Name. Rebellious 16 Nights also faced this feeling of being moved by the truth. Therefore, rebellious 16 Nights was a faked tsundere, cough cough. In short, if it involved the issue of companions, whoever dared to touch his companions, he would make that person pay the price, the kind that would be worse than death. On this point, Wuming was the same. Ah, that's right, it's just No Name. Even if you are the scheduled participants, I don't need to ask for your consent to cancel the gift competition, because you are really too insignificant. Luo said arrogantly, ignoring White Yiksha's impatient gaze. Pay attention to your words, kid. Even if No Name is a community without a name, the other party is still a community. It's not reasonable for you to cancel the gift competition without the consent of all the communities. That's why I came to meet with No Name to discuss. Luoz acted like he had taken advantage of Renbaqian. Didn't I say that as long as it's you two, No Name, will do without participating in the gift competition and directly get the prize? Then, Luoz looked at Black Rabbit. And you two is an existence that is willing to sacrifice herself for others. Isn't this a very good suggestion? When Luoz said this, Black Rabbit began to hesitate. Luoz was right. You two had the nature of sacrificing herself for others. It could be seen from the fact that Black Rabbit had been constantly working for No Name for the past 3 years. Although No Name had once helped Black Rabbit, what was more important was the dedication of the U2 clan. Just as Luoz looked at Black Rabbit lecherously and Black Rabbit began to hesitate, Wuming suddenly opened his mouth. And it was a violent tone that was the complete opposite of the kind tone from before. It's about time to shut up, Lord Perseus' second-generation ancestor. Wuming, who raised his voice by a few decibels, made Luoz tremble and jump in fright. Rinha Black Rabbit was also shocked, but the focus of everyone's attention was not on Rinha Black Rabbit, but on Luoz and Wuming. When White Yiksha saw that Luoz was frightened, he began to look at Luoz as if he was a piece of trash. Feeling White Yiksha's gaze, Luoz felt embarrassed. However, White Yiksha was an existence that he could not afford to offend, so he could only vent his anger on No Name, who provoked him and could afford to provoke him. It's just No Name. Do you think you're the only ones with a loud voice? Luoz shouted angrily. I'm sorry for being loud. I just didn't expect the leader of Perseus to be so cowardly. Wuming apologized with a mocking expression. Wuming's words and his mocking status made Luoz angry. However, Luoz smiled. I know, you're purposely provoking me so that I can continue with the gift competition. Then, Luoz continued to speak arrogantly. I've already seen through your plan, No Name! But Wuming also laughed. Are you really the descendant of that hero? You self-righteous idiot. Chapter 590. Ha! What do you mean? Luoz frowned and looked at Wuming. Although Luoz was a rich second generation who only cared about eating, drinking and having fun, he was still very proud of his bloodline. Wuming's words caused Luoz's anger to increase by another notch. Isn't this very obvious? Wuming purposely put on a very helpless face. Why would you think that if I angered you, I would let you continue with the bestowment competition? These two are completely unrelated. I'm just telling the truth. You were really shocked just now, weren't you? Wuming's words made Luoz unable to refute. He was indeed shocked. This point was seen by everyone present, including White Yiksha, who had always looked down on Luoz. Furthermore, my suspicions of whether you are the descendant of the hero Perseus were not wrong. Luoz's community name was Perseus, which was Perseus, the hero who killed the snake-haired demon Medusa. Since he dared to use Perseus as his name, then the first leader of this community should be that hero. In the Box Courtyard world, it was common for heroes in myths and legends to come to the Box Courtyard. After many heroes completed their deeds, they would be summoned to the Box Courtyard. This was what Wuming saw when he was reading the history books of the Box Courtyard in the underground library of No Name. After Perseus died, he ascended to the immortal constellation mountain. At the same time, he was summoned to the Box Courtyard and started his story again. This was considered the creation of the community of Perseus. Therefore, every generation of leaders of Perseus was the direct descendant of Perseus. Therefore, Wuming's suspicions towards Luoz should not be suspected of Luoz. But who asked Luoz to be a rich second generation? He did not have the demeanor of his ancestor at all. I heard that Perseus is a 5-digit community, but you want to move to a 6-digit community. You are really a rich second generation who ruined your ancestors' business. Then, Wu Ming continued to taunt, or rather, insult. A spoiled brat like you who doesn't think about improving himself and only knows how to eat, drink, and play, I'm afraid you've already used up all the treasures left behind by Perseus. Wu Ming wasn't wrong. Perseus left behind many treasures for Perseus, but when it reached Luo's generation, other than the scythe sword, invisibility helmet, flying boots and other incomparably important treasures of Perseus, the other treasures were basically consumed by Luo's. How was it consumed? Of course, it was for Luo's to enjoy himself. This was also why Luo's wanted to move the Perseus from the 5-digit middle tier to the 6-digit lower tier. Because they no longer had the qualifications and strength to stay in the middle class. No name is giving you face by participating in your gift competition. It's fine if you have a grateful look, but who are you trying to show your arrogance to? I have seen Perseus before. Although he also has an annoying look, compared to you, he's still far behind. Ignoring everyone's surprise at Wu Ming saying that he had seen Perseus before, Wu Ming acted as if he had discovered something. Ayaya, you see, I'm really rude. Doesn't this mean that you are really the descendant of the hero Perseus? That's great. At least you are not a bastard that came out of nowhere. Otherwise, I would really have to mourn for Perseus. Everyone was dumbfounded. Who would have thought that Wu Ming, who was considered steady among the problematic children of 16 knights, would be so special? However, Wu Ming didn't stop. But compared to this, isn't it more proof that you are the descendant of Perseus? You have ruined this bloodline. As expected, you have to be careful. I think you should directly move the community to 7 digits. Otherwise, you will be in trouble if you provoke someone you shouldn't. Oh right. Wu Ming acted as if he had good intentions. Our 2105380 outer door is quite spacious. Do you want to squeeze in with us? Seeing that you are Perseus, we, no name, will take care of you. Shut up. From the beginning when Wu Ming insulted Luo's was already slightly angry. The more Wu Ming said, the angrier Luo's became. In the end, the veins on his head popped out. With a roar, Luo's took out his gift card and took out a sickle-shaped sword. He slashed down at Wu Ming's head. That should be the legendary weapon against immortality, the scythe sword harp. Be careful. Ren and the Black Rabbit were shocked. As a god relic, it could already cause harm to White Yiksha. Naturally, this weapon could also cause harm to Wu Ming. However, 16 knights and White Yiksha were unfazed. Luo's and the rest's indulgence had weakened his ability by a lot. One could say that if it weren't for Perseus' gift card, Luo's would not have been able to stay in the 5 digits. He would have been pushed down to the 6 digits long ago. White Yiksha and 16 knights did not think that Luo's could hurt Wu Ming. Both of them wanted to take the opportunity to see Wu Ming's ability. However, it was true that Luo's could not hurt Wu Ming. It was just that both of them were surprised by Wu Ming's defense against Luo's attack. Both of them thought that Wu Ming might dodge or block Luo's attack. However, they never thought that Wu Ming would be able to control Luo's without moving his body at all. That was right. He was controlled. At that moment, Harp was less than a centimeter away from Wu Ming's head. One could say that if Wu Ming moved a little, Harp would slash him. However, Luo's body did not move at all at that moment. What? What's happening? What did you do? Luo said in a panic. Although his body could not move, Luo's could still move his mouth. You bastard. What did you do to me? Luo's was really panicking. After all, anyone who was controlled by such an inexplicable method would also be panicking. Hey, Hey. You're the descendant of a hero. Don't panic, alright? Wu Ming shrugged helplessly. Oh. Is this your telekinesis? I didn't expect it to reach such a level. White Yiksha opened his paper fan and smiled. It could only be said that White Yiksha was indeed the strongest star spirit. He could see the essence of Wu Ming's power at a glance. After all, I'm also a spirit. It's only natural that I have strong mental strength. Wu Ming smiled. What controlled Luo's was the telekinesis formed from pure mental strength. Wu Ming completely attached his telekinesis to Luo's body. As a result, the telekinesis that was many times stronger than Luo's had firmly locked him in place. It was as if he was frozen by an invisible ice block. Moreover, it was an ice block that was 10,000 years old. What? Telekinesis. How can such a weak power control me? Luo's roared angrily and began to struggle free from Wu Ming's telekinesis. However, it was useless. Luo still couldn't move. He couldn't even tremble slightly. Luo's was completely suppressed by Wu Ming's telekinesis. Don't waste your energy. I even controlled the giant god to float in the sky for fun. You're just a spoiled brat who has been spoiled by eating, drinking, and having fun. How can you break free? Wu Ming mocked. Then, Wu Ming took Heeful from Luo's hand and examined it in his hand. It's indeed a good artifact. If I didn't already have Heeful, I'm afraid this would be mine. However, Black Rabbit couldn't help but complain. I feel that Mr. Villo is more mysterious than we thought. How can that be? I'm just a somewhat special spirit. Then, Wu Ming smiled. However, this smile was like a demon in Luo's eyes. Putting the scythe aside, Wu Ming snapped his fingers. Paw-dash, in an instant, a piece of parchment appeared in Wu Ming's hand out of thin air. Then, under the witness of Lord White Yiksha, the ruler of the hierarchy, Lord Luo's, please sign this document. Then, under Luo's horrified gaze, Luo's pressed his fingerprint on this unknown document. Chapter 591. After controlling Luo's like a marionette, Wu Ming removed his control over Luo's. You despicable bastard. Luo's was just about to explode in anger when a terrifying gaze locked onto him. Wu Ming's ruby-like pupils had turned into vertical slits. The pressure that was precisely controlled by Wu Ming pressed down on Luo's as though it was aimed at him. I just don't want to bully you too much. If you're not afraid of death, you can try. Or you can take out the star spirit on your neck. Wu Ming glanced at the necklace with a snake-haired banshee's head on Luo's neck and continued. The prerequisite is that you're prepared to die. At that moment, Luo's felt like he was looking at a terrifying giant dragon. Pure blood. Dragon species. Luo's body trembled as he muttered involuntarily. Hearing this, White Yiksha squinted his eyes and looked at Wu Ming with interest. This made Wu Ming shrug his shoulders helplessly. Then, Wu Ming smiled at Luo's. Alright, Master Luo's, you can return to your community. Of course, the Letitia gift competition will continue tomorrow. You know what I mean, right? Wu Ming smiled and waved the parchment with Luo's handprint in front of Luo's. Instantly, Luo seemed to have thought of something and his face turned into the color of pig liver. In the end, Luo's left without saying a word. He left helplessly as if he was dead. When Luo's pressed his handprint, Wu Ming purposely slowed down to allow Luo's to see what was on the parchment. At that moment, Luo's fully understood what kind of existence he had provoked. He was completely done for. Speaking of which, what is the content of the document that Mr. Villo made Luo's sign? Black Rabbit asked excitedly. However, White Yiksha, who was interested in Wu Ming's tricks, directly extended his hand. Quick, kid, let me take a look, White Yiksha said as he instantly snatched the parchment from Wu Ming's hand. Everyone gathered around White Yiksha and read the contents on the parchment together. Bestowed game name, ownership of Perseus, contestant, Luos Pathios contestant's winning condition, remain calm and not feel fear in the face of the host's coercion. Winning condition, the contestant cannot meet the winning condition. Oath, respecting the above content, based on the glory, flag, and authority of the organizer, this game of blessings will be held. Seal of Originate God. Renhi, Black Rabbit, and even White Yiksha were all shocked. Their screams made Wu Ming and 16 knights, who were behind them, take a step back. What's wrong with you guys? Wu Ming scratched his ears and shook his head, which was shocked by the sound of surprise, with a helpless look on his face. Wait. Mr. Villo, is this the authority of the organizer? Black Rabbit looked excited. Wu Ming nodded honestly. It is the authority of the organizer, but why are you guys so excited? But, Mr. Villo, that is the highest authority that very few people can hold. Ren didn't know what to say. Even we are a little out of place. Speaking of which, when did thou obtain the authority of the organizer? White Yiksha used a paper fan to cover the lower half of his face to hide his gaffe. I don't know the exact time. If I have to say, it should be before I came here, Wu Ming thought. Or rather, it was when he was at the no-name base. In no-name's base, I suddenly realized that I had gained a new ability. This ability allowed me to force people to participate in my bestowment competition. Wu Ming looked at everyone. If not for that, Wu Ming wouldn't have chosen to negotiate with Luos directly. In other words, Wu Ming had already decided that if the leader of Perseus was a decent person, then Wu Ming would try to negotiate with him on the issue of Letitia. And if the other party was an annoying fellow, then Wu Ming would deal with him directly. After the initial meeting and brief discussion with Luos, Wu Ming chose the latter. It could only be said that this second generation was too unlucky. Being arrogant and despotic for a long time made him forget his respect for the strong. Even in front of White Yiksha, he was arrogant, not to mention the no-name that had no name and flag. However, no one had ever told him that even in no-name, there were strong people. Omega, and this second generation just happened to bump into Wu Ming's gun. After speaking rudely to Wu Ming out of anger, Wu Ming used his coercion to target him. And ever since Luos pressed down his handprint, he had already begun his bestowment competition with Wu Ming. After developing a fear of Wu Ming, this guy's community, Perseus, no longer belonged to him, but to the victor, Wu Ming. This once again showed that Luos had lost his respect for the strong because of eating, drinking, and having fun for a long time. If he still knew respect, then he wouldn't have gotten angry at Wu Ming, who had the authority of the bestowment competition and was clearly a strong person. Wasn't that an act of seeking death? Wu Ming believed that anyone with a little bit of foresight wouldn't have done what Luos did. Instead, they would have faced Wu Ming in a more rational and kind way. After all, he was facing a hot-tempered guy like Luos. If it was someone else, Wu Ming wouldn't have put his courage to the test. However, even if Luos didn't get angry on the spot, Wu Ming wasn't afraid that he wouldn't fall for it because the document didn't have a time limit. In other words, it could continue until Luos became fearful. That was how word games were played. And through the authority of the bestowment competition, Wu Ming also saw the power of this authority. No wonder the Demon King was called a natural disaster. If Wu Ming carried out such a flawed bestowment competition with Perseus, then they definitely wouldn't have a chance of winning. Well, now that I think about it, if a strong person like you obtained the authority of the bestowment competition, then we wouldn't be so surprised. White Yiksha smiled. Speaking of which, just now Luos mentioned a pure-blooded dragon species. Is Mr. Villo a pure-blooded dragon species? Black Rabbit asked excitedly. This made everyone focus their attention on Wu Ming. Other than 16 knights, everyone present knew about the existence of pure-blooded dragon species. Wu Ming's words were also seen in the underground library of No Name. Even in the box court world with many strong people, there were also the existence of the three strongest races: star spirits, natural gods, and pure-blooded dragons. The highest-ranking star spirits of the ghost species, elves, and demons races, the god spirits of natural gods and Buddhas, the pinnacle of phantom beasts, and the pure-blooded dragon species that didn't have the tree of evolution. These three represented the three strongest races in the box court. Among them, the strongest could be said to be the star spirits. This was because the star spirits were the only existence that didn't have much relationship with humans. The other two races were more or less related to humans, and from a certain perspective, it was a fatal relationship. As an example of the star spirits, White Yiksha was the best example. White Yiksha was the star spirit of the sun and white night. The best explanation for natural god spirits was those gods that didn't evolve. A typical natural god spirit was in Greek mythology. Zeus and the others were basically natural gods. As for the pure-blooded dragon species, it was a little strange. The pure-blooded dragon species weren't born, but an existence that appeared out of thin air due to the sudden convergence of a powerful force. It was very suitable for the name fantasy species. Such an existence often looked like a dragon, so it was called the pure-blooded dragon species. The pure-blooded dragon species would only have pure-blooded descendants through single reproduction. Combining with a mutant species would only give birth to a sub-dragon. Wu Ming had the experience of his eyes turning into vertical pupils. Coupled with Luos's words, everyone couldn't help but suspect Wu Ming's identity. Actually, if I have to say, I'm an existence that's stronger than those things. Wu Ming smiled. Chapter 592. After White Yiksha heard Wu Ming's words, he showed a thoughtful expression. What does that mean? Black Rabbit was very confused by Wu Ming's ambiguous answer. Ren had the same expression as Black Rabbit. On the other hand, 16 Knights Reverse looked excited. Needless to say, this guy was definitely excited because Wu Ming was a powerhouse. Forget it, just treat him as a pure-blooded dragon. Wu Ming sighed. After all, it was not easy to explain the existence of Wu Ming's origin dragon, so it was better to treat him as a pure-blooded dragon. However, everyone was very dissatisfied with Wu Ming's perfunctory answer. Immediately, 16 Knights Reverse exploded. Don't worry about that, little brother. Come and fight with me first, 16 Knights Reverse said directly. Please allow me to refuse. Wu Ming looked at 16 Knights Reverse helplessly. Tisk you really run away after getting an advantage, 16 Knights Reverse said unhappily. Although Wu Ming did not see any way that he got an advantage, alright, it's getting late. Tomorrow is Letitia's gift competition. Let's go home and sleep early. With that, Wu Ming stood up. Home, Ren and Black Rabbit pondered. When they thought of Letitia returning to No Name tomorrow, the two of them could not help but smile. Then we won't send you off. White Yiksha waved his hand casually. After that, everyone thanked Yasha and left. After all, without White Yiksha's care, Wu Ming would not have been able to meet Luos so quickly and trick him. After Wu Ming and the others left, White Yiksha was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he continued to sit in the room. White Yiksha looked at the parchment in his hand and muttered carefully. Originate God. The God of origin, Then, White Yiksha's mouth curled up. Oh Luos, you really offended a terrifying guy who is no weaker than me. On the way back to No Name, Black Rabbit was in a good mood and skipped in front. Wu Ming, 16 Knights, and Ren walked at the back, but from their brisk footsteps, they seemed to be in a good mood. After all, he had achieved his goal. Speaking of which, why didn't Mr. Villo directly ask Luos to release Letitia? Ren asked. After all, Perseus was now Wu Ming's possession, so why would he waste time and effort to hold a gift competition for Letitia? Wouldn't it be better to just transfer Letitia to No Name? That won't do, little guy, our No Name still needs to promote. 16th Night held her head with both hands and said in a light tone. 16th Night is right. Because of Letitia, our plan to use guard to promote No Name was ruined. Ren, have you forgotten? With Wu Ming's reminder, Ren also remembered that their original purpose was to promote the freshman of No Name. In the end, because he was attracted by Letitia, Ren directly forgot about it. Sorry. Ren smiled embarrassedly. After all, Ren is only an 11-year-old child. With 16th Nights and I here, you can rest assured and train your ability as a leader. We will do everything well. Wu Ming patted Ren's little head. Thank you, Mr. Villo, Mr. 16th Nights. Ren said emotionally. Ren and 16th Night smiled because of this. Then, 16th Night seemed to have thought of something and laughed. But speaking of which, it's really interesting. Our plan was ruined because of the blonde loli, and now we have to promote No Name through the blonde loli. Indeed, because Letitia defeated Guard, the gift competition between Wu Ming and the others and Guard was cancelled. However, the communities that were enslaved by Guard were freed. Although they were also very grateful to No Name, they praised White Yiksha's brilliance more. After all, it was White Yiksha who directly intervened to punish Guard and forced the disbandment of Forsgaro. However, the promotion of No Name was done. However, because of Letitia's matter, Wu Ming directly used the gift competition to take over Perseus and let Perseus give up the deal with the unknown person and continue the competition with Letitia as the prize. As for whether No Name could win and win back Letitia, Wu Ming and 16th Night smiled and didn't say anything. What a joke, the organizers were all on their side. With such convenient conditions, if they still couldn't win the gift competition, then No Name could disband. Of course, it didn't mean that they were going to cheat. Master Little Guy, tomorrow you will see the blonde loli return to No Name. 16th Nights was ready to make a move. Then, 16th Nights looked at Wu Ming. You are not allowed to compete with me for the right to participate in this gift competition, little brother. Don't worry, I will definitely not compete with you. After all, with Wu Ming's secrets revealed one by one, Wu Ming could be said to be constantly whetting 16th Night's appetite. Even 16th Nights had a temper. Although Wu Ming didn't have the slightest bit of guilt, he still let 16th Nights make a move this time. If I make you sick, then the gains will not make up for the losses. Wu Ming joked. Ha, at least you know what's good for you. 16th Nights and Wu Ming looked at each other and smiled. They reached out a hand, clenched it into a fist, and pressed it against each other. Sometimes, things like friendship were often the same as love. It could be love at first sight. In less than 2 days, Wu Ming and 16th Nights could be said to be friends. In other words, the 4 problem children who joined No Name could be said to be friends. After all, birds of a feather flock together. Sometimes, fate was such a wonderful thing. Right, Mr. Villo, you just took Mr. Luo's community into your pocket. Will you be treated as a demon king? Black Rabbit said worriedly. Ren also came to his senses. Mr. Villo, this is indeed a problem. However, Wu Ming shook his head. Although it seems like I used the organizer's authority very casually, Luos voluntarily pressed his handprint. This isn't considered forcing him. Wu Ming smiled like a rascal. This made Ren Black Rabbit a little confused. Indeed, the reason why the Demon King was called the Demon King was because he arbitrarily abused the organizer's authority. However, Wu Ming really didn't force Luo's. Luo's voluntarily pressed his handprint and agreed to participate in Wu Ming's gift competition. However, this voluntarily made Renhe Black Rabbit a little helpless. It was clearly Yu who forced him. As the leader of the hierarchy, White Yiksha was a witness. Luo's could only accept it. 16th Knights helplessly smiled. Alright, White Yiksha was an accomplice. That was why Wu Ming thanked him. You can say that White Yiksha is turning a blind eye. After all, Luo's is quite annoying to White Yiksha. Wu Ming said as he walked. Forget it. As long as nothing happens. Ren's shoulders drooped. He had already given up. It was fine as long as he didn't cause any trouble. Gradually, the abandoned building of No Name appeared in front of everyone. Then, let's bring this good news to everyone. Chapter 593. In other words, Letitia's gift competition will be held as usual, right? Jiu Yuao crossed her arms and nodded unhappily. After Wu Ming and the others returned to No Name, they told Komodo Osaka and Kasuga Biao, who were guarding Letitia's side, about what happened. I'm not happy. Why is 16 Knights participating in tomorrow's gift competition? Why can't Yuao and I participate? Haruai Biao looked at everyone with an unhappy tone. That's right, Jiu Yuao and Haruai Biao were unhappy because Letitia's gift competition was given to 16 Knights instead of them. There's nothing we can do about it. Ladies, your gift competition was yesterday. 16 Knights reverse smiled. But that gift competition was cancelled because of Letitia. Jiu Yuao protested. I don't care. It's my turn anyway. 16 Knights smiled and shrugged. He was like a child, acting shamelessly. Alright, everyone. This time, it's about who Letitia belongs to. I only let Letitia continue with the gift competition, but I didn't let him change the content. In other words, the content of the gift competition is still unknown. Let's just let 16 Knights participate. Wu Ming helplessly tried to persuade them. After all, even if it's a companion, I won't reveal the content of the gift competition. Wu Ming smiled as if it was a matter of course. This time, even Jiu Yuao and Haruai Biao, these two problem children, didn't say anything. If the gift competition was about fighting, then the two of them would really be in trouble. After all, if they were to compare their combat power, the two of them wouldn't be as good as 16 Knights. Haruai Biao, who had the life catalogue, was still okay. At the very least, it was a gift related to the body. However, Jiu Yuao really couldn't do it. After all, her gift was only in the aspect of domination. Even though Jiu Yuao completely controlled Guard, that was only because Guard was too weak. If she encountered a more powerful opponent, then her gift would be completely useless. Take Luo's as an example. No matter how useless Luo's was, no matter how much of a playboy he was still the descendant of Perseus. Wu Ming guessed, no, he was certain. If Ancient Flying Bird used the grace of domination on Luo's, who had hero's blood flowing in his veins, then it would only last for a short while before Luo's forcefully broke it open. Wu Ming smiled when he saw Jiu Fei Fei's disappointed expression. How about this, Flying Bird? After Letitia returns to No Name, let's study your gift. My gift? Jiu Yuan Fei was stunned. That's right. Wu Ming nodded. After all, when White Yiksha praised the grace for us, he said that the grace of the three of you can be said to be the strongest human grace. When Wu Ming said this, everyone reacted. Although Jiu Yuan Fei's gift seemed to only be able to control one person, the existence that White Yiksha called the strongest human grace wasn't that simple. Maybe your gift isn't just for controlling others, it might have other effects. Zhou Yuanfei nodded with anticipation at Wu Ming's suggestion. Okay then, but after all, for the sake of Letitia's ownership, let's let 16 knights fight in tomorrow's gift competition. Zhou Yuanfei nodded rather proudly and agreed. I'm sorry to trouble everyone. At this time, Letitia said rather guiltily. After all, everything this time was caused by Letitia. Although everyone didn't say anything and even enjoyed it, Letitia didn't take it for granted. On the contrary, Letitia, who was especially considerate of her companions, felt even more guilty. Letitia-senpai. Black Rabbit looked at Letitia like this and suddenly had tears in her eyes. Then her ears were grabbed by Zhou Yuanfei and Kasuga Hibiya. Wah! Wah! What are the two of you doing? Black Rabbit burst into tears. He covered his ears with tears and looked at the two of them. It's just Black Rabbit, don't make it so sad. Kasuga Hibiya said expressionlessly. You're a Hakata noble, you should be more elegant. Zhou Yuanfei smiled. How about Hakata noble, a shame? I think Hakata noble, laughter, how about that? Wah! You two problem children. Letitia looked at the problem children who were causing trouble again and couldn't help but smile. It was a very warm kind. Then, Letitia felt a hand on her head. So, you should accept your companion's help as a matter of course. Wu Ming rubbed Letitia's head while watching Black Rabbit being teased by Zhou Yuanfei and Kasuga Hibiya. Villo, Salma. Letitia didn't know what to say anymore. And this is not without a price. If you accept my power, you will become my dependent and be the guardian of no name for the rest of your life. Then, Wu Ming looked at Letitia. Are you prepared for this? Letitia's expression froze, and her eyes firmly met Wu Ming's eyes. Yes. Villo, Salma, Letitia is prepared. Wu Ming smiled. Then, go to sleep early, and return to No Name tomorrow. Okay. It was late at night, and the moon hung high in the sky, shining down on this lifeless land. The last light in No Name went out, and everyone fell asleep. The next day, everyone woke up early. Whether it was Ren, Black Rabbit, or the three problem children, they all finished their breakfast early and went to No Name's meeting room. Zhou Yuanfei looked at the meeting room with no sign of the two, and was confused. Where did Villo and Letitia go? Are they still lazing around in bed? Could it be that the two of them stayed up very late last night, and are too tired to get up? Haruai Hiroyuki said with a blank expression. This made the very pure and innocent Black Rabbit instantly blush. This reminded her of the first time she saw Letitia yesterday, when Wu Ming and Letitia had intimate contact. How could that be? How could Villo, Salma and Letitia do that kind of thing together? Yao-san, you should watch your words. I didn't say what kind of thing it was. Could it be that Black Rabbit really wanted to see that kind of thing? Haruai Hiroyuki covered his mouth, and showed a proud smile. Of course not. Black Rabbit didn't think that way. Black Rabbit blushed and refuted Haruai Hiroyuki. I didn't expect Black Rabbit to be so impure. As expected of a Hakata noble, shameless. Zhou Yuanfei also joked. You two problematic adults. Black Rabbit was crying from the two of them. 16th Night casually looked at this farce, and sat down and looked at Ren beside him. Then, did the two of them go to Perseus? Ren nodded. As expected of 16th Night, Mr. Villo, Salma and Letitia Salma really did go to Perseus. As he said this, Ren took out a piece of paper with Wu Ming's message written on it. There's no need to look. I just want to see if my guess is correct. As he said this, 16th Night casually walked to the window with his hands on his head. Then, 16th Night mischievously shouted at Jiu Yunfei and Hiroi Hiroyuki, who were still teasing Black Rabbit. Hey! It's almost time. I'm going to participate in the gift competition. However, Jiu Yunfei and Hiroi Hiroyuki instantly looked at 16th Night, and their eyes were red like ghosts. Don't even think about running away. That's right. Even if I can't participate in the gift competition, I must watch. Ha ha ha. Then, let's see if you can catch up to me. 16th Night said as he jumped out of the window. Mr. 16th Night. Ren and Black Rabbit were shocked, but they immediately reacted. 16th Night wasn't an ordinary person. Don't run. Jiu Yunfei and Hiroi Hiroyuki said as one ran out of the room and the other jumped out of the window. Wait. Wait, Miss Flying Bird, Miss Hiroyuki. As expected of the gift Moon Rabbit. Even if she was teased by the two, Black Rabbit would still worry about them. Then, Black Rabbit also ran out, leaving Ren alone. Everyone. Wait a minute. Chapter 594. On Wu Ming's side. At present, Wu Ming was not at the place where Perseus was hosting the gift competition. Instead, he was at a certain corner of World's End. However, Wu Ming had indeed sent Laetitia back to Perseus. This time, however, Laetitia was treated as a guest of honor. Last night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Wu Ming had quietly left No Name and made a trip to Perseus. Although Perseus was already Wu Ming's possession, Wu Ming was not like those arrogant people who could just sit back and relax. No matter what, Luos was still a descendant of Perseus. Who knows what kind of tricks Luos might play? After all, the gift competition was mostly a game of words. There were many loopholes to be found. Even though Perseus was essentially Wu Ming's private property, if some thief or robber were to loot Perseus, then Wu Ming would suffer a loss. However, it just so happened that Wu Ming had bumped into some thief who was trying to steal his property. This gave Wu Ming a pleasant surprise. This gave him a reason to properly teach Luos a lesson. After teaching Luos a lesson, Wu Ming made a trip to Perseus' storage room and stored all the treasures in Perseus into his dragonest. Wu Ming completely ignored the fact that Luos was unable to accept the fact that he had fainted. As Luos' loyal subordinates were about to take Luos away, Wu Ming casually removed the snake-haired banshee's collar from Luos' neck. The members of Perseus who were taught a lesson by Wu Ming dared not say anything. They could only bring Luos away from Wu Ming. After that, Wu Ming personally ordered and supervised the members of Perseus to set up the gift competition venue overnight. Ignoring the exhaustion of the members of Perseus, under Wu Ming's intense pressure, the previously abandoned gift competition venue was rebuilt overnight. Wu Ming nodded his head in satisfaction and then left. This allowed the members of Perseus to breathe a sigh of relief. However, when Wu Ming left Perseus, he left a huge crack in the ground beside Perseus. This caused the members of Perseus to suck in a breath of relief. After returning to No Name, Wu Ming rested until the sun was about to rise, when he woke up. It had to be said that Wu Ming's mental state was a special characteristic. Wu Ming had an incomparably powerful mental state. He did not need to sleep. However, it was just like 3 meals and snacks. Although Wu Ming did not need the normal 3 meals, he could still enjoy snacks. Wu Ming would not have the time to not rest. Coincidentally, Laetitia had also woken up early because she was a little excited. However, this was also good. After all, Laetitia was still an item of Perseus. Afterwards, Wu Ming brought Laetitia to Perseus and allowed her to move around freely in Perseus as if she was the mistress of the place. This made Laetitia a little dumbfounded. However, under Wu Ming's constant petting, Laetitia obediently accepted. Although Perseus was not happy, because of Luos's failure in the gift competition, the owner of Perseus was Wuming. Therefore, they had to listen to Wuming. Or they could choose to leave Perseus. However, this group of loyal officials chose to stay. It was said that it was because of Luos's father. They had decided to serve Luos for the rest of their lives. Wuming gave a ridiculing smile once more. If Luos was slightly more ambitious, even if he could not reach 4 digits, at the very least, Perseus would not fall to 5 digits. After instructing the gift competition to start on time and instructing everyone to invite Hei-Tu as the referee, Wuming left. Wuming believed that this matter concerned the ownership of Letitia. Hei-Tu would surely take up the role of referee. After all, if someone were to cheat in this competition without U2 as the referee and win, Hei-Tu would have nowhere to cry. However, after leaving Perseus, Wuming did not immediately return to No Name. Instead, he went to Wuming's current location, World's End. Before leaving, Wuming went to look for Luos and asked him about the person who wanted to buy Letitia. In the end, Luos, who had been so arrogant earlier, answered Wuming's question. A pure-blooded dragon species, Luos believed, was not to be messed with. Even so, the only answer Wuming received was that the other party was a young female in black. Other than that, there was nothing else. This caused Wuming to wonder if Luos was playing with him. However, Luos's old face trembled in fear as he assured Wuming that he was not biased. The other party's black cloak seems to have the effect of concealing one's face. I can only tell that it is a female. Those were Luos's own words. However, there were many types of clothing that could conceal one's face. After that, Luos was beaten up by Wuming. You only know how to eat, drink and have fun. Can't you do something useful? Wuming complained helplessly. Even so, Luos was helpless. He only wanted to eat, drink and have fun. According to Luos, the other party had suddenly come over and said that they wanted to buy Letitia using something that Luos was satisfied with. If not for that, Luos would not have suddenly cancelled the gift competition. However, the other party had maintained a sense of mystery and did not tell Luos what they wanted to buy. In Wuming's opinion, the other party might be here to get a free meal. When the time for the transaction came, they would simply rape Letitia. After beating up Luos again, Wuming asked if there was any meeting point. However, Luos said that she would come over on her own when the time was right. That caused Wuming to feel displeased. Then, in order to avoid getting beaten up again, Luos's mind raced as he recalled the other party's words. If there is anything urgent, just come to World's End. That was the reason why Wuming had come to World's End. However, the man in black who wanted to buy Letitia did not specify how to do so. He only said that he wanted to come to World's End. Thus, Wuming had no way of finding him. However, even if he could not find him, it would not matter. Wuming was simply displeased with how the other party was treating Letitia as an item. Thus, he wanted to see if he could find him and beat him up. Even if he could not find him, it would not matter. However, the heavens are always looking out for me. As he thought about that, Wuming turned to look at the man in black who had just emerged from the small forest. However, when Wuming sensed that the other party was emitting a powerful aura that seemed to be meant to intimidate him, he smiled. It would appear that he had caught a big fish. Is there something that Luos wants to say? The man in black spoke up. His voice was that of a very sweet young girl. Add her petite figure to the equation, it was no wonder Luos told him that she was a young female man in black. Next, Wuming smiled. Sir Luos wants me to tell you that the transaction is off. Chapter 595. Reject. Facing Wuming's sudden rejection, the girl in black was clearly stunned. Perhaps in the girl's eyes, Luos, this trash, would not reject. But now, the situation was out of her expectations. But this way, the girl in black also noticed that something was not right. From the intelligent girl's point of view, Luos, this rich second generation, would not reject their deal. Then, there were two possibilities. Either Luos was unable to continue the deal due to other matters, such as being threatened, or the man in front of her was lying to her. For example, the man in front of her was the one who threatened Luos. To be able to represent Luos in rejecting the deal, the man in front of her was definitely not as simple as he looked. All in all, this seemingly ordinary little specter must have a lot to do with Luos rejecting their deal. Thus, the slightly unhappy girl decided to make a move on the man in front of her to make up for her unhappiness. Just because he said he would cancel, what kind of people do you think we are? The girl in black said rudely to Wu Ming. The girl in black had already started, so she needed to pick a fight. But Wu Ming also wanted to have a good talk with the girl in front of him who was not simple. That's because Lord Luos can't even protect himself, so he had no choice but to cancel the deal with you. Wu Ming was not angry at the girl's rudeness, but instead replied her with a light tone. Can't even protect himself. Wu Ming's words made the girl in black interested. But according to what I know, Perseus has been doing well recently, and is even preparing to migrate to 6 figures. This made Wu Ming smile. Oh, I didn't think that a rat like you who hides outside the box would have such a good way to gather information. Wu Ming smiled. However, the scoundrel in Wu Ming's words angered the black-clothed girl. A mere spectre dares to call His Highness a rat. The girl was completely angered by Wu Ming's insults. In an instant, the girl's figure disappeared. In the next second, the girl's figure appeared in front of Wu Ming. It looked like the girl was throwing herself at Wu Ming. But no matter how he thought about it, it was impossible. The girl took out a small knife from under her black cloak and stabbed towards Wu Ming, who was very close to her. But Wu Ming did not care about the girl's attack. Instead, he was thinking about the girl's words. Listening to the girl's words, it seemed like His Highness was her master. This was really interesting. Someone who could be addressed as Your Highness was definitely not a simple person. While Wu Ming was thinking, the girl's daggers his finger. Generally speaking, daggers shouldn't be effective against ghosts, but Wu Ming could tell that the girl's dagger wasn't an ordinary dagger. Although this dagger did not look like a divine artifact, there must be something special about it. At the very least, it could stab spirits. After all, Wu Ming did not think that this seemingly shrewd girl would do such an embarrassing thing. Indeed, just as Wu Ming had guessed, the girl's dagger could hurt beings like spirits. But in essence, such a dagger was just a special dagger that was mass-produced. It wasn't that precious. It was only because of the girl's fighting style that she used such a dagger. Then, the girl in black's dagger directly stabbed into Wu Ming's body. In the girl's opinion, the arrogant spectre in front of her did not have the chance to react and was killed by her. However, Wu Ming could not be stabbed to death by a slightly special dagger. Or rather, it could not even cause any damage to Wu Ming. If I'm really an ordinary spectre, maybe I can really go to hell. Ah. Hearing Wu Ming's tone that did not sound like he was weak after being stabbed, the girl in black was obviously shocked. The girl was sure that she had indeed stabbed the dagger into Wu Ming's body. Even if it was a spectre, after being hit by her attack, it should be dead. Then, the girl in black used the technique of getting close to Wu Ming again. In an instant, she and Wu Ming were separated by a considerable distance. She did not even want to stab the dagger into Wu Ming's body. It looked like a teleportation, but Wu Ming, who had a little experience in space, could tell that it was not teleportation. Is your technique controlling distance? Wu Ming asked casually. Who the hell are you? The girl in black was shocked. While she said vigilantly, the girl took out a dagger to defend herself. She already had the idea of retreating. After all, I'm not an ordinary spectre. Wu Ming calmly pulled out the dagger that was inserted into his body. After pulling out the dagger, only a hole was left on his clothes. Wu Ming's body did not have any major injuries. It could be said that he was unscathed. Playing with the dagger in his hand, Wu Ming looked at the girl in black. Compared to these unimportant matters, I'm more interested in your background, Miss Man in Black. Wu Ming smiled slightly, and then began to chant. Fear the one with wings. Evil people and powerful people are all afraid of me with wings. My wings will bring you curses. Evil people can't hit me. When Wu Ming was chanting, he released a trace of his aura, which made the black-clothed girl freeze. It was as if she had met an acquaintance. However, the girl also knew that what Wu Ming was chanting was not something good, so she quickly reacted. However, although Wu Ming seemed to be chanting slowly, his speed was actually very fast. By the time the girl in black reacted, Wu Ming had already finished chanting. In other words, the girl lost the chance to escape. In an instant, Wu Ming's entire person vanished. The next moment, as if it was ironic, Wu Ming's figure appeared in front of the girl in black just like how the girl approached Wu Ming. He tightly stuck to the girl's body as if he was throwing himself into her arms. Wu Ming also lifted the girl's black cloak while he was at it. What entered Wu Ming's eyes was a petite girl with long black hair wearing a sleeveless dress and a short jacket tied around her waist. I didn't expect the girl to look so good. Wu Ming said teasingly. But don't think too much about it. The reason why Wu Ming used the phoenix incarnation to stick to the girl's body was because Wu Ming wanted an eye for an eye. After all, no one would be happy to be stabbed in the back all of a sudden. This was also the reason why the girl did not move when Wu Ming was so close to her and was teased by Wu Ming. The girl was stabbed in the back by Wu Ming. Ugh! The girl covered her abdomen and staggered back 2 steps. However, just when the girl thought that she could rely on distance control to retreat, she found that her ability did not work. What? What's going on? My ability doesn't work. The temporary failure of her ability, coupled with the injury on her abdomen, made the girl cry out. Her legs went soft and she almost knelt on the ground. However, Wu Ming hugged the girl's body in time. Your ability is distance control, right? I have used a sealing technique to temporarily seal your ability. Seal. Seal. The girl was shocked. There were many silencing skills in Yggdrasil, World Tree, which were skills that existed to prevent the enemy from using their skills. Wu Ming naturally learned 1 or 2 of such a convenient skill. He was no longer constrained by the game system. The silencing skill he used had reached a duration of half an hour. In other words, if the girl only had the ability to control distance, then she was doomed today. Of course, it did not mean that Wu Ming's silencing skill could silence the opponent 100% of the time. It still depended on the strength of the enemy. Just like White Yiksha, Wu Ming estimated that the silencing skill could only work for less than a second. However, for the girl who was smart, half an hour of silence was already good enough. Then, can you tell me who your master is, the girl who has become my captive? Chapter 596. Just like that, the girl's abdomen was bleeding while Wu Ming held her in his arms and questioned her in an unnegotiable tone. If the girl's wound was removed, this scene would look like a beautiful scene of a young boy and a young girl hugging each other. However, Wu Ming was not the kind of person who would be blinded by his enemy's lust, and the girl would not fall in love with a guy who stabbed her and questioned her at the moment. The result was that they could not come to an agreement. I won't say anything. Don't think of getting any information from me. The girl glared fiercely at Wu Ming. The girl had already admitted defeat. The reason why she was sent to negotiate with Luos was because she was smart and had the ability to retreat easily. If one had to say something, the girl was actually very weak. However, this way, Wu Ming could completely suspect whether there were companions who were secretly protecting her or communicating with her. It doesn't matter if you don't say anything. I think you're not the only one around. There should be companions or something like that. At this moment, an object suddenly charged towards Wu Ming's position. However, Wu Ming did not panic in the face of this attack. For Wu Ming, who had already activated the Phoenix transformation and entered the seraphic speed world, such an attack was completely dodged. However, Wu Ming did not want to dodge. I am the strongest and the one who holds all victory in my hands. No matter if it's a human or a demon, I am the one who defeats all enemies. I will defeat any enemy that stands in my way. Giant with supreme divine power, give me your assistance. In just a moment, Wu Ming deactivated the Phoenix transformation and activated the giant transformation. In an instant, a golden giant shadow appeared behind Wu Ming. However, the giant shadow exuded a powerful aura that would not make people think that the giant was really virtual. Following Wu Ming's consciousness, the giant raised its fist and swung it at the incoming object. Boom! With a loud boom, the giant's fist collided with the unknown object. The unknown object was like a baseball that was sent flying by Wu Ming's giant bat. However, the force of the collision created a strong storm that instantly spread to the surroundings. The storm swept through the surrounding forest. Trees that were very close to the epicenter of the storm were directly blown down. The surrounding trees were almost parallel to the ground. The wind swept Wu Ming, causing his clothes to flutter. However, Wu Ming himself remained motionless in the wind. On the other hand, the girl in Wu Ming's arms was almost blown away by this astonishing storm, and she even let out a pitiful cry. If it wasn't for Wu Ming's arm for the girl to hug, the girl would have already flown out. If the girl, who had temporarily lost her ability, was blown away, she would either die or be seriously injured. After all, the girl's body was not that strong. The storm slowly came to a stop, and Wu Ming saw the face of the thing that attacked him. It was a pitch-black griffin with some dragon characteristics. Just now, this griffin wanted to use its hard body to collide with Wu Ming, but it was hammered away by Wu Ming's giant form. The griffin stopped in the sky and shook its head that was hammered by Wu Ming's giant form. The griffin looked in the direction of Wu Ming and the girl, or rather, directly at Wu Ming. The griffin was not stupid. It could still see that the giant's shadow was controlled by Wu Ming. Are you okay? The girl, who had calmed down, asked the griffin in the sky worriedly. Wu Ming glanced at the girl. Her initial hesitation was obviously because she swallowed the griffin's name that was about to come out of her mouth. He had to admit that the girl's method was quite good. She really didn't give any information. I'm fine. The griffin shook its head, then flew down and landed in front of Wu Ming not far away. Your Excellency, I apologize on her behalf for her previous offensive behavior. There is no need for us to be enemies. The griffin began to negotiate with Wu Ming. However, the griffin's words made Wu Ming laugh. Oh, you two are indeed in the same group. Even your actions are the same. The girl also made the first move. When she realized that she couldn't win, she was prepared to escape. In the end, she was captured by Wu Ming. The griffin also made the first move, but it was beaten back by Wu Ming's giant with a punch. Only then did they begin to negotiate. If I didn't have some tricks up my sleeve, I'm afraid that I would have died here today. Wu Ming mocked the girl and the griffin. It was really as Wu Ming had said. Their behavior was indeed somewhat immoral. The young girl's face blushed a little. However, the griffin was an existence that appeared to be more mature than the girl. It did not feel ashamed of Wu Ming's words. Even Boxland, which uses the gift competition as its main means of survival of the fittest, has to make do with the law of the jungle. Not to mention, this is World's End, which is no longer part of Boxland City, the griffin said calmly. Indeed, no matter where one was, in order to survive and negotiate with others, one needed strength. If Wu Ming was weak, then sorry, but Wu Ming was not qualified to negotiate with them. Thus, if Wu Ming was weak, then he would either die to the girl's dagger or die to the griffin and become its dinner. However, Wu Ming was very strong. He was so strong that he could capture the girl and beat back the griffin with a punch. With that, Wu Ming was qualified to negotiate with them. You're right. I agree with what you said, so I can't blame you. Wu Ming shrugged. Wu Ming also believed in the principle of respecting the strong, which coincided with the griffins. However, when the griffin thought that it saw an opportunity to negotiate, Wu Ming's next move made it uneasy. Be afraid of those with wings. Evil people and strong people are afraid of me with wings. My wings will bring you curses. Evil people can't hit me. Wu Ming chanted the language spirit at an extremely fast speed. The girl closest to Wu Ming heard this familiar language spirit and immediately shouted at the griffin. Be careful, this language spirit has an ability similar to mine. When the griffin heard this, it immediately spread its wings and flew into the sky. However, for Wu Ming, who had entered the state of lightning speed, the griffin's speed was too slow. In an instant, Wu Ming, who was carrying the girl, jumped fiercely, and Wu Ming disappeared along with the golden giant's shadow. Be careful. Suddenly, the griffin heard the girl's voice above its head. The griffin subconsciously raised its head and saw a huge golden fist. Boom, a dull sound came from the forest. It was a pity that the surrounding birds had either died or fled in the first round of the storm. Otherwise, they might be able to see a scene of birds flying together. Looking at the griffin pressed to the ground by the golden giant's shadow, Wu Ming smiled. Then we can negotiate now. Chapter 597. The griffin was pressed to the ground by Wu Ming's golden giant's shadow. No matter how hard the griffin flapped its wings, it couldn't get rid of the giant's suppression. This was because when Wu Ming used the giant's shadow to press down on the griffin, he also silenced it. However, the effect wasn't great because this griffin relied on its own physical strength. Don't waste your energy. I think negotiating with me is your only way, unless you have other companions with special abilities. Wu Ming smiled at the griffin under his feet. Although Wu Ming was in his spiritual form at this moment, his abilities were basically the same as his main body. In other words, Wu Ming could use multiple avatars. It could be said that if it weren't for Wu Ming wanting to have fun with the griffin, Wu Ming would have killed it with a sure kill. But after all, the main thing now was to gather information. Moreover, Wu Ming wasn't a demon who liked to kill, so he wouldn't directly end the griffin's life. You're a powerhouse. I have to admit that. However, the griffin didn't give in just because it was subdued. It just generously admitted that it was inferior to Road. I'm indeed no match for you. This time, it's my loss. Although Wu Ming liked tough guys like the griffin, it was still very annoying when the enemy didn't give in after being subdued. I don't hate guys like you, but if you lose, you have to admit it. I don't want to fight. Tell me honestly what information you have. With that, Wu Ming stretched out his hand and placed it on the girl's stomach. Whoa! Stinky rogue, what are you doing? The girl in Wu Ming's hand instantly changed. She didn't care that her bleeding body hadn't stopped and desperately tried to stop the rogue in front of her from attacking her. Wu Ming sighed. Then, he half-curled his fist and pointed his index finger at the girl's head. Bang! Wah! The girl held her head in pain and kicked wildly in the air while shouting. Don't think too much. I just want to show my sincerity and treat you. After saying that, Wu Ming placed his hand on the girl's injured stomach. Then, Wu Ming suddenly pulled. Ah, it hurts, it hurts. The girl instantly moved her hand from her head to her stomach. Because Wu Ming had pulled out the dagger from her abdomen, the wound that had started to stop bleeding started to bleed profusely again. She was in so much pain that she felt like she was hovering between life and death, she thought. This caused the griffin under Wu Ming's feet, which was controlled by the golden giant's phantom, to frown. Its body, which had just stabilized, began to struggle again. I protest. This is blatant torture. The young girl looked at Wu Ming with tears in her eyes, looking as if she had been greatly wronged. Both the girl and the griffin began to suspect that Wu Ming was just bluffing when he said that he would treat her as a show of sincerity. This made Wu Ming feel rather helpless. He didn't know who started it first, but this was called reaping the consequences of one's own actions. Just treat it as a punishment. Ignoring the griffin's struggle and the girl's resistance, Wu Ming carried the girl with one hand and casually threw the dagger with the other. The dagger was firmly controlled in the air by Wu Ming's mental strength. Then, Wu Ming lifted the girl's head again, making the girl move her hand to her head. Wu Ming put his hand on the girl's bleeding stomach again. Then, the girl felt a warm current on her stomach. Wu Ming was using the life recovery magic to treat the girl. At the same time, the pain on her stomach was slowly disappearing, which made the girl feel as if she was soaking in a hot spring. The result of this was naturally the girl making a strange sound. The girl quickly covered her mouth, blushing and not daring to look at Wu Ming. This made Wu Ming laugh. Is it that comfortable? Wu Ming looked at the girl teasingly. This made the girl's blushing face even redder. The griffin under Wu Ming's feet pretended not to see this. After seeing that Wu Ming was really treating the girl, it stopped struggling. Alright, it shouldn't hurt anymore. Wu Ming removed his hand from the girl's stomach. Through the hole in her dress, the girl's smooth skin on her stomach was exposed. Thank you. The good upbringing made the girl blush as she thanked Wu Ming. But the girl forgot that it was the guy she thanked who stabbed her. Then, Wu Ming teased the girl back. The feeling on your stomach is not bad. Wu Ming's teasing made the girl realize that the guy in front of her was an enemy. She also remembered that she was injured because of this guy. But the girl forgot that the guy stabbed her because she stabbed him first, although she did not cause any damage. The girl stared at Wu Ming as if she was acting shamelessly and did not speak. And Wu Ming was not angry. Instead, he looked at the griffin under his feet. Kid, my name is Glea Graves. Left with no choice, the griffin could only speak first. Elder Gu. After the griffin spoke, the girl shouted in surprise. It was as if she did not understand why the griffin would compromise. Elders make me feel more at ease, although I am still not satisfied with this. After all, Wu Ming would rather not know the name than no other information. Humph. Even if Elder Gu spoke, I will not tell you any information. For the sake of Her Highness, you should give up. The girl turned her head and no longer looked at Wu Ming. Not bad, young lady. Wu Ming had a whole new level of respect for the young lady's courage. In that case, don't blame me for being ruthless. Wu Ming turned the girl's face with his hand and smiled at her. You. What do you want to do? Looking at this extremely scary smile, the girl wanted to step back in horror, but she found that she was still in Wu Ming's hands. Suddenly, Glea Graves spoke. Don't go too far, kid. Glea raised his head slightly and looked at Wu Ming with sharp eyes. However, Wu Ming laughed. That's funny, Griffin. Wu Ming did not call the griffin by his name, but called him by his creature's name. Although I was indeed interested in you guys who wanted to buy Letitia, you guys made the first move from the beginning. I was just passively counterattacking. Then, Wu Ming closed his eyes and opened them again. His originally red pupils instantly turned into golden vertical pupils. Endless pressure emanated from Wu Ming's body. Or is it because my easygoing nature made you guys think that I'm easy to provoke? Do you have to wait until I'm serious before you guys tell me the truth? Sensing Wu Ming's terrifying aura, Glea and the girl froze. You are. Glea's reaction made Wu Ming narrow his eyes. This reaction was the same as the girl's reaction when she sensed his aura. In other words, these two people knew him. At the very least, they were familiar with his aura. This made Wu Ming laugh. In this case, these two people might have seen his original body, or their organization might have information about his original body. According to the worst-case scenario, Wu Ming's original body might have been stolen by them. At this moment, there was a riot in the surrounding forest. Rumble. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.